of the Council, officers of the Council, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Worship, the Mayor of Nuneaton and Bedworth, Councillor Martin Walsh.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Thank you. Welcome to the full council meeting on 21st of September, February 2024. Given there are public within the gallery, etc., I shall read out the evacuation procedure. We're not expecting a fire alarm, but if a fire alarm should sound, could you please leave the building by the doors you entered or the appropriate marked fire exits. Please do not use the lifts and take the stairs. The assembly point is across the road outside Lloyd's Bank. If anybody requires any help and assistance to evacuate the building, please make themselves known to one of the members of staff. Thank you. This meeting is being recorded for later streaming on our website, on our YouTube channel. So can we also ensure that everybody has their phones either switched off or switched on to silent, please? Thank you. Item 2, we have apologies. We have apologies for Councillor Cape, Hammersley, Harbison, Councillor Watkins, Councillor Downs, and Councillor Baxter Payne is running late and hopefully will be with us shortly. Councillor Wilson.
The previous meeting, Councillor Kenner has been taken ill, and so I would submit his apologies, and Councillor Golby is running him home. I'm sure those in the know understand why.
Indeed. Do we have any other apologies? No. In which case we shall continue. Thank you very much. Item 3. We have minutes of the previous meeting which are on your main agenda. We have 3 lots of minutes, I believe. Yep, we have 3 lots of minutes. Firstly being the minutes as of the 13th of December, which is, there we go, thank you, which is on page 37 of the agenda. Everybody happy with that one? True and accurate record thereof? Thank you. I notice a couple of slight typo errors, which was, where are we? Question 1, page 37, which question raised by Councillor Condacor. Just a typo error, I believe. Where it's gone. I think it should read busiest as opposed to business. Yes. And question 6 referred to, should read May 2021, not 2022. But apart from that, I'm happy with those minutes. I'll sign those off. Okay, thank you. We then have minutes as of the 17th of January. You're happy with those as being a true and accurate record thereof? Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. And then lastly, we have the Civic Honours Awards meeting as of the 29th of January, just. We happy with that? Thank you. Thank you for that. We'll move on. Item number 4, declaration of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest that are not on this current schedule? No. Thank you very much. Passing forward. Item 5, announcements. I don't have any announcement. Any announcements from the leader? No. Okay, thank you very much indeed. We move forward to item number 6, which is public participation. We have a number of questions raised by the members of public. I will take them in order as on the list. Members of public, you have 3 minutes to speak, and I'll make sure you hold to that. Thank you very much. Mr. Stephen Hay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tackling intimidation is a cross-party issue. Abuse knows no political boundaries. Robust debate and scrutiny are essential aspects of public life. Abuse and intimidation shouldn't be, is a quote from the introduction to the Joe Cox Foundation Civility Pledge, and Labour members are all signed up to this. Can the council leader confirm that his colleagues are also signed up to this, and if not, why not? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hay. Councillor Wilson.
The aims of the Joe Cox Foundation are laudable and valuable to civic society. Anyone who wishes to sign up to their pledge is, of course, welcome to do so. But I don't think you need to sign a pledge to uphold these principles. They are something we should be doing anyway. Robust challenge and debate is essential for a healthy democracy. You can hold someone to account for their words and deeds, but too often nowadays people seem to think it is acceptable to go for the personal. Mr. Mayor, I think it is safe to say that at no other time since I've been involved in politics has the situation been so bad. We have keyboard warriors hiding behind the veil of anonymity of social media, saying and threatening awful things that they would not have the courage or conviction to do if they were to see us face to face. This cowardly behaviour should have no place in politics at any level. Yet here in Nuneaton and Bedworth, both myself and others on this side of the chamber have received death threats. We have seen women, female councillors, receive threats of rape. We have experienced our places of work contacted in efforts to harass us in our everyday lives. Indeed, I saw a quote from a member opposite on social media saying that I, and I quote, "am not even worthy of being called a human being." Will Mr. Hay distance himself and his party from that comment and remove the councillor responsible from his position? I don't think he will. And I don't think we have to go far for the root cause, Mr. Mayor. When we have the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party calling Tories scum, I would not call that civility in politics. When a party conference is held and Tories are welcomed by left-wing activists with a mannequin being lynched from a bridge, I would hardly call that civility in politics. Not one of these things has been done to Labour Party members at their conferences. Most of the abuse of politicians I have seen online and in person have been committed by left-wing activists. I agree with the principle of Mr. Hay's question that there should be civility in politics, but I think he should get his own house in order before criticising others.
Question 2 comes from Mr. Brian Wormsley. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the Conservative leader please confirm that he was horrified and disgusted by the diabolically offensive, ableist comments and draconian views of Conservative councillors about children with special educational needs and disabilities, plus their parents? Deputy Leader Golby and Deputy Mayor Hammersley have harmed their mental health and well-being due to their parental blame rhetoric and something in the water comments, all raised during Children's Mental Health Week. Will he take action and reprimand them for being disrespectful, failing to uphold the Nolan principles, breaching the Equality Act 2010, and for surely breaching the Conservative Party Code of Conduct?
Thank you, Mr. Wormsley. Councillor Wilson.
The events at a scrutiny committee at Warwickshire County Council and not this council. Of course, I acknowledge the depth of feeling on this highly emotive issue, and there are a number of families who have been upset by the edited video on TikTok. The councillors concerned have already issued an apology to those families that have been affected by what they saw in the video. I think it is also important to remember that there is an ongoing investigation at Warwickshire County Council following the complaints received. That is a quasi-judicial function and effectively means that the case is currently sub judice. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to intervene in an ongoing investigation, and I believe it is only right that the investigation is allowed to proceed and come to a conclusion.
I'd like to ask a supplementary question arising directly from that reply.
Carry on.
Thank you. If those Conservative councillors involved had a shred of decency, they would resign. However, a previous precedent was set back in 2018. Conservative councillor Tromans had the party whip removed pending the results of an investigation. Tromans was under investigation for alleged assault. He later had the whip returned after police suggested there was insufficient evidence to support a prosecution.
Mr. Walmsley.
As such,
Mr.
was a
Walmsley.
Conservative leader of
Mr.
this council
Walmsley.
defending these
I don't
abhorrent
believe
actions.
that's appropriate at this moment in time. So, that's not a supplementary question.
Can you give me a moment, Mr. Mayor? I haven't prepared for his supplementary.
Just saying you're not allowing that as a supplementary question.
That will not be allowed as a supplementary, so there's no need to respond.
Well, I think, seeing as it's already now out there in the public...
It was actually a statement rather than a question, wasn't it? Or the first part was a question, the second part was a statement.
Members are entitled to respond to statements.
In which case, carry on.
Question supplementary, you cannot allow a response to something that's not a question.
Mr. Mayor, he has already put what he has said into the public domain, whether or not you have ruled it out, and I think that is grossly unfair.
If you let me finish the question. Constitution item 4.
If you wish to make a point of personal explanation.
Issue a point of personal explanation. I do take group discipline very seriously and the impacts that it has on the public. And I would also expect Mr Walmsley, as a member of the Labour Party, to also share in that view, because he made some very reprehensible comments on social media, and I quote, saying in Stockingford during the COVID period of time, "You can do anything you want because you're special and because you would anyway." In Galley Common, he said, "Having sex with your sister is still permitted, but you must be home before..." I think those in glass houses...
Sorry. Question 3, Mr. Mark Garrett. Present. Is Mr. Garrett present? No. Okay. Question 4 is from Mrs. Michelle Condacor.
Thank you. Since the lily pad fountain was removed from Marketplace in the Nuneaton town centre, I've experienced an increase in cars being driven through the town centre at speed in the evenings. There is now nothing to act as a traffic calming measure, and more drivers are ignoring the one-way signs. I am fully aware that Warwickshire County Council are the Highways Authority, but Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council are partners in the town centre. Will the council monitor the situation with the CCTV, pass on all incidents of unsafe driving to the police, and look at adding street furniture or flower beds to calm speeds? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Condacor. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Identified in her question, highways is the primary responsibility of Warwickshire County Council. Should we be requested to, we will provide assistance to the police in any investigation they have ongoing, as we have always done. I would remind Mrs Condacor that 24-hour CCTV provision was removed in the last Labour budget of February 2021, and it is only thanks to this Conservative administration that we've been able to find the funding to restore the 24-hour coverage in our towns.
once again, if it's relevant to the answer given.
Yeah, you haven't actually answered the question. Will you report things to the police? Because as a member of the public, the car was going so fast that I couldn't even get the registration number. So I rely on the CCTV people. It's irrelevant what the Labour group did. I know we have 24-hour CCTV, so I want that to be used to make things safer. Will you do that, please?
Councillor Wilson.
Mr Mayor, party administration cutting the CCV 24-hour coverage because we wouldn't be able to provide assistance to the police if we had allowed that to continue in the scenario that Mrs Condacourt outlines. Now, we can't have everyone looking specifically at the lily pad fountain all day, where it was, looking at it all day, every day. So if members of the public can come forward if they have issues and identify the times and dates, and I'm sure that with officers we can look at the video footage that is there and where necessary liaise with that member of the public and the police to raise any issues that might contravene the law. But I can't have someone sat there watching that video all day, every day, non-stop, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's just ludicrous, Mr Mayor.
Is that appropriate? No.
You can ask for it. Needs to second.
Do you have a seconder for that motion? In which case we need to take that to a vote. Is that correct? No. All those in favour of taking the recommendation to... Sorry? Oh, sorry. Okay. The issue to the scrutiny committee. Those in favour? Okay. Those against? Unfortunately, that is not carried. Thank you. Item number 5. Sorry, question number 5 is Mr. Alan Baxter. Mr. Baxter present? Yes, thank you.
Is that live, is it? Okay, I'll just pop my reading glasses on. Okay, I have a delightfully mundane question for you today. The question relates to the blocks of garages at the end of the Populars driveway in Stockingford. The brick-built block, which is numbers 9 to 15, is falling progressively into dilapidation. Part of the roof blew off in the winter storms, and the roof on number 15 has caved in. Number 15 is also home to a family of rats. The brickwork is spalling all over and damp is rising. Now, noting that a block of similar garages was demolished due to dilapidation this month, I believe, I would like to ask the council to consider the same for this block. You could transform it into allocated parking spaces, a bit like you did with the toilet block behind the council house. This would alleviate the parking problems OAP residents in the Populars currently have. There's not enough spaces for the OAP residents in the flats and bungalows for them to park their cars down there. It should also alleviate some of the antisocial behaviour that takes place in that end of the Populars, as the whole area would become more open plan and illuminated by the lamps that currently exist adjacent to the OAP flats. Ambulance and fire engine access in emergencies would also be eased down there. You may be able to move the 2 or 3 tenants from block 9 to 15 into the other block, which is 1 to 8, as some of those are currently empty. And this block recently had a brand new roof installed. There should be a long-term saving to the council in maintenance costs, as the flat sheets of tarmac are easier and cheaper to repair than brick buildings. Hopefully you can turn this into a win-win for the council and local residents down there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baxter. In the absence of Councillor Golby, Councillor Wilson, please.
On behalf of Councillor Golby, so I don't know all the details behind the specifics, but there is an ongoing capital asset review ongoing across the whole of the HRA estate, that be houses, garages, and indeed some shops which fall into the HRA account too. And that then forms into part of the wider 30-year business plan that we have to have by law with the housing revenue account. So we need to complete the results of that asset review before we can decide what we do with long-term pieces of infrastructure and real estate across the HRA account. So what I'm saying is, it's not a no, it's not a never, and it may be that what you are suggesting is the right course of action, but to make sure that it all stacks up according to what we're required to do by law and everything else fits together in a jigsaw, because it's not as easy as just saying we do this and move it over here. There may be some other things as part of the housing revenue account we have to consider as part of it. But that work is underway because it is out of date and needs to be done ASAP. And that piece of work is impacting not just on garage sites, but it is impacting on a number of other key decisions that we have to make with the HRA for the medium and long term.
Thank you very much. Item number 7. At this point, if any member of the public wishes to leave, because at the end of obviously public participation may do so. Otherwise, by all means, you may stay. Item number 7 is questions to members' questions. I would like to ask Councillor Evans, please. Thank you.
Finance outline to Council how the council tax support scheme will benefit the borough in the next financial year.
I don't disappoint Councillor Evans too much when I say that, as he will have noticed, the local council tax support scheme is not actually in the papers tonight. We would normally bring it to Budget Council, but unfortunately there have been a large number of legislative changes this year, which we need to work through. And as I keep saying, we will take the time we need to get things right. So we'll be bringing it to the March Cabinet. And if it needs to go to Council, it will go to the April Council. But I can confirm that we will be bringing such a scheme to Cabinet. It will be the usual scheme where people can apply for up to 85% relief on their council tax. And I've had some figures today which confirm that we anticipate that will affect 8,242 people at a cost of £10.1 million.
Councillor, question 2, Councillor Emma Shires. Thank you, Councillor.
The comments made by Councillor Golby and Councillor Hammersley has had an impact on Nuneaton and Bedworth SEND children and families. I would therefore like to ask Councillor Wilson for his and his group's opinion with regards to the SEND crisis that is currently impacting on our residents.
Thank you. My response to Mr Walmsley.
Question 3, Councillor Keith Condicorn.
Boring one on rubbish. The Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, DEFRA, produces English fly tipping statistics using its flycatcher database. Councils upload data on the numbers of fly tipping cases and details of actions such as fixed penalty notices, FPNs, onto the database. This database is strictly for fly tipping cases, and briefings clearly tell councils not to include FPNs for littering in the database. Last year, a tiny number of councils, including Nuneaton and Bedworth, ignored instructions and filed grossly excessive numbers of including FPNs related to littering. This mistake resulted in DEFRA tables showing our borough for 2022-23 to have the highest number of fly tipping related FPNs in the region, with 1,712 FPNs issued for 1,870 incidents. This is clearly rubbish. In the calendar year 2023, which you just finished, how many FPNs for fly tipping explicitly has the council issued? And when is the council going to fully investigate and clear the mess of fly tipping along Jubilee Way? Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Malcolm, do you wish to respond?
As per my previous answer to you on this subject, I've asked that each fixed penalty notice that's been issued for the relevant reported period to be individually reviewed to confirm whether it met the necessary criteria as set out in the guidelines issued by DEFRA. Unfortunately, this review hasn't been completed yet. When it is, the updated figures will be provided to DEFRA as necessary. There's been 46 notices issued specifically for fly tipping in 23, but having said that, as a borough, we have made a conscious decision to deal with smaller fly-tipped rubbish with littering fixed penalty notices and not a Section 33 EPA, as it's dealt with in a more timely manner. It doesn't mean it's not fly tipping. We are working hard to improve the environment throughout the borough, and our enforcement team are doing an exceptional job. And with regards to Jubilee Way, whilst I believe the query relates to littering and not fly tipping, I can confirm the council is working with partners to ensure the litter is cleared as a priority. Thank you.
Councillor Condacor.
Clarify, the 48 that were issued, were they issued as £400 fines, or were some of them issued as the £100 FPNs? Because you sort of drifted between the different, we issued different types. So can you just clarify, are all 48 £400 fines? Thank you.
And they were issued specifically for fly tipping.
Question 4. Councillor Czeklevic. Thank you.
I was delighted to see a number of men and women from across the borough granted the status of alderman, alderwoman and freeman and freewoman of the borough. This really highlights what an amazing community we are part of. It's truly humbling to hear the stories and achievements and about the active role which all of these residents are involved in to make the borough a better place. There is another person for the Civic Honours Subcommittee seeking to honour. I would like to ask the progress report on the renaming of the road after Fusilier Lewis Carter, who was sadly killed in action in Afghanistan on the 16th of August 2009, aged just 18. I've spoken to Fusilier Carter's mother and to members of the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers, who are all keen for this to happen by Normandy Day in June of this year. I know there is a very strong will on this side of the chamber, and I also hope on the opposition side to get this done as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. The subcommittee and cabinet have agreed in principle to renaming part of Clinic Drive after Fusilier Louis Carter, who lost his life in the line of duty in Afghanistan. I believe it is absolutely right that we should ensure that this sacrifice is honoured by our community, which is why we are taking this through as quickly as we can. There have been some legislative changes following the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act 2023 that do impact on the process for renaming streets, and we have to ensure that we meet all the requirements of the Act. We have consulted on the proposal as required, and we aim to bring a follow-up report to Cabinet as soon as we can. We're hoping March time if we possibly can, subject to all the paperwork being finalised. Subject to meeting all of the legal tests, I hope we'll be in a position to formally rename the road after Fusilier Louis Carter in time for June.
Very much indeed. And I must say I was most disappointed that I was not available due to illness to be at that award ceremony. Very much the same, but I have watched it, and it was a very wonderful evening for those present and those who received that, and well deserved. Every member of those people, all the aldermen, alderwomen, freemen and freewomen of this borough. Excellent situation, and I say so disappointed that I was unavailable. Thank you very much indeed. We move forward to item number 8. Matters of special urgency. A special urgency decision of the Nuneaton Business Improvement District, the BID exempt, was taken place on the 31st of January 2024 at the meeting of the Cabinet, and this is just for noting purposes. Thank you. Item 9 is the Cabinet report. I will pass over to the Leader of the Council, Councillor Wilson. Thank you.
Pieces of paperwork that we've got tonight. So I move the report as printed in my name and would draw attention in particular to a couple of key items. So there is, of course, Article 4, Subsection 1 directions, which are on the agenda later. But one of the key highlights, I think, is the update on the Gypsy and Traveller Site Allocations Development Plan, which means for the first time ever we now have met our legal requirement for Gypsy and Traveller pitches within the borough, and it is less than we originally forecast that we were having to do according to previous consultations, and we aren't going to be flooded, as some people have speculated online, with incursions and all this, that and the other, but it does give us the legal tools to actually deal with these cases if they do arise far more effectively. We also have the very welcome news that there is £716,000 for Bedworth Market upgrades. I think everyone who has been into Bedworth Market lately would agree it is starting to look rather tired and showing its age and could use some tender loving care, and that is the biggest single capital project from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. Out of the £4 million, £716,000 direct into Bedworth Market. And then also we've got the Business Improvement District, which is moving forwards and will be going to, the ballot papers have actually already been issued, and I'll be taking a single member decision, as I understand it, shortly, as to how we as a council exercise our vote for the properties that we do have that have a rateable value. As ever, myself and Cabinet will endeavour to answer any questions that we can. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any questions from the floor? Councillor Condacor.
At the meeting when we discussed the Bedworth Market regeneration and the new photo montages, obviously that has to be done within a year under the terms of this funding. So the photo montages were quite sort of snazzy. Yeah, they looked very, very expensive. So can the portfolio holder tell us how we're progressing to more realistic designs and how that is going to do something we can actually afford? Because obviously the photo montages showed us the principles, but they were, I don't think, actually buildable within the money. Thank you.
It all has to be done in the next year, in year 3 of the UK SPF. It has to be committed or have started within year 3 so that we can keep going, because there are very few projects, unless they're relatively small or contained, which will be dealt with within 12 months from procurement to completion. It is going out to tender. I'm looking at Matt to confirm that actually has gone out. Last I heard it had. It's just about to go shortly. And then we will see what comes back in the tender document. But what we are being crystal clear on is that the maximum in the budget is £716,000. So for any bidder that comes forward, I will be expecting them to know that budget and not come up with something which is £1.4 million, which we clearly don't have and we can't afford. We expect them to bid to budget and deliver on budget, and those will be the criteria that myself and Cabinet will be looking at.
Another member wish to make comment with regards to the reports? Okay, it is for noting, I believe, one typo error I found. Apparently, the budget for the Midland Combined Authority was to be approved in February 2023. I'm sure it should say 2024.
Myself and the Chief Executive did sit there through the budget process, and just out of a point of curiosity, if members are interested, the leader of Wolverhampton City Council actually wanted, as part of the budget process, for us to be charged a levy on the transport, to pay a transport levy to the Combined Authority. And I told him, well, if you don't want my vote, you're not going to have my money, because we don't get any receipts from the Combined Authority for transport specifically. We can access some limited budgets as a non-constituent member, but not everything. And I hope he has now got the message that as a non-constituent member, we do not pay in to the transport and he will not be getting our money. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
In which case we move forward to item number 10 on the agenda, which is the election of Mayor and Deputy Mayor. Do I have any nominations for the position of Mayor for the coming municipal year of 24-25? Councillor Wilson.
And there's still more to go. It gives me great pleasure, actually, Mr Mayor, to nominate Councillor Julian Gutteridge for the position of Mayor of the Borough for the municipal year 24-25. I've known Julian a long time, probably far longer than either of us cares to remember, but, but he has been a stalwart friend throughout all those years, but he has a passion for this borough and delivering the best for its residents. And I think you can see that passion come through quite clearly when he talks about his current role in the Cabinet. Don't start him on trees, please, Mr Mayor. But he is very, very passionate in whatever he does, and I'm sure he will bring that same level of passion and commitment to the role of Mayor for the next municipal year that he does to his Cabinet role and to be honest, his constituency work as well, that we both share in the ward of Whitestone. I think it's high time that he got to wear the chains, Mr Mayor. He's been here in two guises, as the member for Bulkington and as now the member for Whitestone, and I think he thoroughly deserves that opportunity to be the first citizen of the borough and His Majesty's representative. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Do I have a seconder for that? Oh, Councillor Tromans, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excellent, Mayor, and I am very happy to second that and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Do I have any other nominations for Mayor for 24-25? Councillor Shepherd, thank you.
To nominate Councillor Emma Shires as Mayor for the municipal year 24-25. She does a sterling job in her ward of Camphill, and I know that would continue into this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Phillips?
Yeah, thank you, and reserve my right to speak.
Do we have another nomination?
On the nominations, which I believe I'm allowed to do. I think both of them would make very fine mayors. I think it's quite a important job for the council, and I do wish it got rotated round, because the leader mentioned Councillor Guttridge's long service at the council. People like myself have got long service, but have got no chance of ever serving the borough as a mayor with the way politics work. So I'm very happy if Councillor Guttridge or Councillor Shires becomes mayor. I think they'll both do the job without being too political. But I do think also we need to think about the job being rotated round on issues like long service, so that actually we all have a chance to contribute to the borough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Other nominations? I'm not seeing anybody. Any other nominations? In which case we shall move that to a vote. All those in favour of Councillor Guttridge becoming mayor for the next municipal year? I thank you. Any nominations? Sorry. Votes for Councillor Shires? Any abstentions? On that basis, Councillor Guttridge is nominated to be the incoming mayor for 24-25. Thank you. I move forward now and ask for nominations for deputy mayor for the municipal year of 24-25. Councillor Markham.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Michael Green for deputy mayor. He's already heavily involved within the community and with the different charities, and I think the role will only enhance his involvement with that. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Support or second that proposal for Councillor Green. Anyone who knows Councillor Green knows that when he gives his commitment, he does a heartily good job on whatever he gets involved in. So I'm more than happy to second that proposal.
Nominations for deputy mayor. Thank you. Councillor Condical.
Position should rotate around the parties, and I'll have been councillor if elected again 13 years by next year. So I'd like to nominate myself to be deputy mayor. I think that'd be a nice cross-partisan thing to do, and I have been here an awful long while. So I hope the members opposite and the members beside me will consider me as mayor, or deputy mayor, I should say, for the next municipal year.
For deputy mayor, Councillor Shires.
Councillor Tracy Shepherd for deputy mayor, please.
Do I? Thank
you. It's telling that one individual in this chamber thinks that mayoralty shouldn't be on merit, shouldn't be somebody who cares about the borough, who wants to do good, that it should just be Buggin's turn, that if they hang around long enough that they should be given that privilege. I would suggest the individual concerned is probably forever disbarred by their own actions, by the repeated and numerous times that they've been censured by the council, not least for bringing the very borough itself into disrepute. So we've had some excellent nominations on all sides. Any one of these people, I'm sure, would rise to that challenge. And I don't believe anyone else has disbarred themselves in the way that uniquely the last speaker from the Green Party did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Point of personal explanation. Sorry.
Thank you. 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 It's Councillor Condacor.
I don't think I deserve to be insulted in such a way. This is the place we should be courteous to each other. And I said I will try and be a non-partisan mayor, and it would be good if others were the same.
We'll shall now move forward to the vote. We have Councillor Green. All those in favour of? Councillor Condacor. Thank you. Councillor Tracy Shepherd. That is carried that Councillor Michael Green becomes Deputy Mayor for the municipal year of 24-25. Thank you. Moving forward to item number 11, recommendations from the Cabinet and other various committees. So 11A is the publicity protocol change to the Constitution. Councillor Wilson.
The Chair of Audit and Standards would normally move this, but he has had a family emergency night and does tonight and hopes to join us as soon as he can. But in his absence, I will move as written, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Croft. Does any other councillor wish to comment? No. In which case we shall move that to the vote. All those in favour thereof? Those against? And do we have any abstentions? No. That is carried. Move forward to item 11B, contract procedures rules update. Again, in the absence of Councillor Baxter Payne, I ask Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, the report is printed.
Thank you, Councillor Artromans.
Changes have been published. It is just wording changes. As a member of Audit and Standards, I'd be happy to second that and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Speak on this matter. Councillor Condacor.
Pointing, we only got the paperwork today. Yeah, we have electronic versions sent, but if you look at all this stuff, it's in such microdot. It's not been presented well. So I'm not going to moan about the procedures, but can we in future, when this type of thing comes to us, we actually have it in slightly bigger print for us as we're getting towards our 60s. Thank you.
Managed to read it, Councillor Condacor, without difficulty, in its entirety. So thank you. Is there any other councillor wish to make comment?
It wasn't issued today, it was issued with the minor change.
Is there any other councillor wishing to make comment? No, in which case we shall take that to the vote. All those in favour as per the written? Okay, those against? No, and abstentions? 2. That's carried. Thank you. Item 3 is Article 4 directions. I ask Councillor Smith, please.
In September last year, Council agreed to rescind the 2008 Article 4 directions that removed permitted development rights from properties in the Abbey and Bolton conservation areas and to implement new Article 4 directions. This report is to feedback on the public consultation responses that followed the introduction of the immediate Article 4 directions that were served in September 23. A total of 279 letters were sent out to gather the views of residents living in all the houses affected by the direction, and the consultation ran for a period of 49 days with just 5 responses received. the responses are listed in the document, so I'll just move to the recommendation for Council to confirm and make permanent the new Article 4 directions for the Abbey and Bulkington conservation areas. Thank you, Mr.
Please. Councillor Brown.
Speak.
Councillors wishing to speak regarding this item. Councillor Shepherd.
Conservation area, obviously, as the Boundary Commission has changed the boundaries, actually part of the Abbey conservation area will now be in Attleborough and the rest will be in St Mary's. So obviously I don't know whether it needs changing now or after May. I'll be happy for some direction from the officers in terms of that, but I think that needs to be noted in the report that actually the conservation area will then be in Attleborough and St Mary's.
With Councillor Smith.
Have changed it slightly. What they haven't done is change the actual conservation area, which is outlined and won't change. But yeah.
In which case, thank you very much. Is there any other councillor wishing to speak on this matter? No, in which case I shall move that forward to the vote. All those in favour as written, with the amendment accordingly. I believe that to be unanimous. I thank you. We move forward to item 11D, which is the General Fund and Revenue Budget for 24-25. Councillor Wilson.
Move on to the substantive item. I would like to comply with convention, as has happened for many, many years with budget presentation, that we suspend standing orders for the proposer, seconder and the leader of the opposition, or in this case the deputy leader of the main opposition, to speak not on the clock for all of the budgetary items. So that would be D through to H as printed. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I believe we need a seconder in the first instance. Is that correct? Councillor Croft. Thank you. Councillor Condacor.
Some time to speak as well, or are you not in favour of that? Thank you.
No, nobody has yet, Mr Mayor.
No. No? Okay. Councillor Croft. We need a vote. Yes, sorry. Apologies. We need a vote on that to suspend standing orders as per Councillor Wilson. Those in favour? Thank you. Those against? That is carried. Standing orders will be suspended. Continue. Councillor Croft. Thank you.
To move the report that stands in my name on the agenda under item 11D, and in so doing I present the Council's General Fund budget for 2024-25, and I apologise to members and members of the public because this will take a while because there is a great deal to say. Mr Mayor, when presenting the budget last year, I said that in facing hard times we had to make hard choices to regenerate our borough, to revive our communities, reform our council, and most importantly, prevent a financial collapse. This year's budget takes place against the backdrop of a broader crisis in the finances of local government in our country. Many councils, like Birmingham, Nottingham or Croydon, did not make those hard choices. They have had to admit that they cannot keep balanced and sustainable budgets and issued Section 114 notices, in effect declaring bankruptcy. Mr Mayor, tonight I can report to the people of Nuneaton and Bedworth that we are in no danger of that fate. Indeed, that our financial prospects are in fundamentally better shape than they were just 12 months ago. Getting this far has not been easy. It has required tough decisions on taxation and spending. Much more remains to be done, because as I always say, a generation of neglect cannot quickly be put right. More hard choices will be required in the future. But the fundamental outlook is now much stronger because of our policies. This outcome has been delivered by a Conservative council which has kept its nerve in the face of sustained criticism from some sectional interests in order to produce a better result for the community as a whole. The budget I present tonight builds on that record. It secures the future of the borough and ensures the sustainability of the council. To do this, we have had to substantially change our approach to budgeting and introduce a much more professional and corporate approach. We have introduced policies to transform the way the council works, to provide a better service to residents and to balance the books. We have adjusted our regeneration and capital programme to reflect new economic realities and protect ourselves from the dangers of excessive debt and interest. Nonetheless, Mr. Mayor, in spite of this, this budget incorporates significant new initiatives to improve the lives of our people and restore civic pride. This administration has grasped the historic opportunity that has come to Nuneaton and Bedworth in the 2020s. Our goals remain, as they have always been, to bring about recovery, revival and regeneration in our community and to reform our council. The task now is to build on the progress we have made so far and see these policies through to completion. Tonight's budget is about just that. Mr. Mayor, because the annual budget encompasses everything the council does, it cannot simply be a record of financial information. A good budget demonstrates both a vision for the future and a plan to achieve it. The Conservative administration stands before the borough tonight, proud of its record of success and confident that its priorities are now being met. And I want to take a moment to review the record of the last 3 years, and what a record it has been, Mr. Mayor. We took action back in 2021 to bring about economic recovery by cutting car parking charges, keeping market rates low, introducing outdoor markets in Bedworth, and rolling out large programmes of business and skills support grants. We have revived civic pride by holding great programmes of events to celebrate the Jubilee and the coronation, restored our local traditions and honours with freedom parades, and supported the arts with the Creative Explorer programme. We have helped to keep the borough clean and tidy by purchasing new fly tipping cameras, introducing commingled recycling, frozen the green bin tax, and aggressively prosecuted fly tipping and littering, as Councillor Markham has detailed earlier this evening. We have upgraded our parks by completely revamping Buttermere Park and installing new play equipment in Bulkington, Kersley, Stocking Ford, Wembrook, Bedworth Miners and Riversley Parks, while improving Glendale performance, planting trees and wildflowers, which I know is very dear to the next mayor's heart. We have supported the forces of law and order by purchasing new CCTV cameras, restoring 24-hour CCTV coverage in the town centres, introducing public space protection orders to ban begging and roadside car sales, and defending the Gypsy and Traveller injunction all the way to the highest court. We have produced a new borough plan in record time, removing the unfair dumping of Coventry's overspill houses, while introducing new high-quality design codes. We are making developers pay their fair share on new housing estates and increasing our planning income on a much more commercial basis. We have helped our people when they were in need by introducing improvement grants in independent living complexes, opening the new homeless hostel at St Benedict Court, and are introducing changing place facilities across the borough. We have reformed and rationalised the council by restructuring management, cutting waste, and improving the performance of our customer services. And Mr. Mayor, against the odds, we have finally begun the work of regenerating both of our town centres, a subject to which I will return later this evening. The evidence of our achievement is indisputable. For just 3 years of work, and against such a tough economic backdrop, that is a record to be proud of. Yes. This progress, Mr. Mayor, is even more remarkable when we consider the condition in which we inherited control of the council just 3 years ago. Under Labour, we saw a decade of stagnation, decay and decline across the entire borough. A Labour council was a mismanaged council with no strategy, no structure and no competitiveness on pay. A Labour council meant financial incompetence with black holes in budgets, overspends on projects and failures to make provision to pay off debt. A Labour council meant a third-rate borough plan, which was nothing more than an abject surrender to Coventry. I have said it before, and I will say it again. The truth is that they let this borough rot. The parks and the playgrounds, the finances, the planning system, the housing stock, the town centres, the local economy. They let it all rot. They did it because it was always easier to salami slice and then blame the government than to do the hard yards to make the changes that we needed. When examining the Conservative record, it should always be borne in mind the low base that we had to start with. Now, Mr. Mayor, speaking last year, I emphasised the importance of moving to a new model where we save for the future rather than spend for the present. This model will keep us safe from the bankruptcy of a Section 114 notice, preserving our independence as a council to improve the lives of our residents, and sparing future generations the burden of debt. And I can report to council tonight that we are now well on the way to such a sustainable financial position. That is because we have moved quickly to institute a new set of policies which have created the right conditions for recovery by setting a highly prudent budget in 2023 and by implementing a recruitment freeze last year. The evidence is there for all to see. Last year, when delivering the 2023 budget, I forecast a balanced budget outcome with a surplus of £3,000. In the event, our sound fiscal management delivered a much better result. I can now report to council that we forecast a surplus of approximately £250,000 for the year end of 2023-24, which is the financial year we're just about to leave. That is a massive deposit in the savings account of the borough. It is security for us against future economic shocks, unexpected costs, and the prospect of future changes to our funding through business rates and the new homes bonus. This surplus shows that our improvements to the council are now bearing fruit. It is a significant turnaround from the structural deficit in the base budget that we inherited in 2021. In 2023-24, we have faced continuing pressure, as I outlined in December of last year, when we forecast a deficit of £4 million in the draft budget. The national economy has now entered recession, and though inflation has eased, it remains relatively high at 4%, which affects our ability to purchase goods and services. High inflation and low growth also have implications for our staffing costs, which is why we have had to budget for a considerably higher pay uplift than we would have done several years ago. That is the challenge that we have had to meet in setting this year's budget. Unlike national government, which can borrow to fund their day-to-day spending, a council's revenue budget must be balanced and sustainable by law. How have we achieved this? Firstly, Mr. Mayor, we have completely reformed the way that we set our budgets. Here at MBBC, we have introduced a much more professional and corporate approach. This year, for the first time, we have introduced zero-based budgeting. That means that the budget has been built from scratch. The departments, managers, service heads have had to plan in detail and justify their spending plans for the next year. This is a complete departure from the old ways at MBBC. For want of a better phrase, the previous year's budgets were often just copied and pasted over and then adjustments made to make income balance outflow. This new professional method has allowed us to strip a great deal of fat out of the budget by removing redundant costs without having to make substantial cuts to service delivery. The threat of a £4 million deficit in December has become a £2,000 surplus in February. While we continue to show deficits in future years in the medium-term financial plans in the papers, this is because we have been extremely prudent in forecasting and assume the worst-case scenario for our income, which is not guaranteed, for example, on business rates. We are also highly confident that a large number of in-year savings can be delivered via the internal transformation programme, to which I will return in a moment. This is not the only change we have made when framing this budget. We have also completely changed the way that we present our budgets and our accounts by removing the old, needlessly complicated system of recharges where central costs were split out across the portfolios. That's why you'll see in the papers the numbers have changed so much since last year. The finance and corporate portfolio appears very expensive at £12 million. That doesn't mean that I've stolen everybody's money. And in Appendix 1, we've restated last year's budget to allow for a proper year-on-year comparison. Now, this may seem technical, Mr. Mayor, but not only does this make our accounting work much simpler and save staff time, which will be good news to the finance director, but it also means that the public can more easily understand what their money is being spent on. It is more open and honest and transparent budgeting. And we have also, again, for the first time, included provisions against risks which we believe may face us in the next financial year, hence the £90,000 for a potential review of the grounds maintenance contract. In the old world, under Labour, these costs would have been a surprise if they occurred in year and shown as an overspend. Under our new approach, we are ready for them. And it's in that spirit that we've also budgeted £680,000 of the new homes bonus as a capital contribution to replace our refuse fleet, because it was going to have to happen sometime. We're also upgrading our internal policies to make sure that in future, projects cannot proceed without sinking funds being established for repairs and upkeep, which has inexplicably never happened at the Borough Council. And we've got those in place already for Buttermere Park and the new leisure centre. The result of all of this, Mr. Mayor, has been a budget that has been highly competently assembled. A real, sustainable budget, not a gimmick. Now residents may ask, what does this mean for me? That's very technical. Well, I'll tell them. It means that Nuneaton and Bedworth will not be Birmingham. Unlike Birmingham, we will not be declaring bankruptcy. We will not be raising council tax by 21%. We will not be holding a fire sale of our assets just to get through the year. We will not be slashing core services to pay for the mistakes of the past. But we will maintain control of our own destiny so that when the people of this borough cast their votes, they will know that they are electing the councillors who will make the decisions and not unelected commissioners. It means that we can continue to provide the good government that has been so sorely lacking in this borough before 2021. So, Mr. Mayor, I now turn to the outlay side of the budget. For the next financial year, we forecast a spending requirement of a little over £19 million on the general fund, which, while is significantly higher than the just below £17 million we forecast last year, represents a prudent restraint when we consider the inflationary pressures we have faced. We are now redirecting our spending so that it better conforms with our priorities. How have we done it? So in addition to the zero-based approach, we have painstakingly sifted through the council's outlays, attacking the waste, setting priorities, and making quality changes. We have removed or reduced budgets in those areas which were not priorities or where which were unlikely to be spent, which is why you will see in the savings table we've saved £20,000 on consultancy, removed a double count of £5,000 on drainage works, and cut councillor expenses by £4,000. The end result of this very long and fiddly process, which I think the Leader of the Council can attest to, has been that we have saved tens of thousands of pounds for the taxpayers of this borough. But we cannot just rely on annual spending reviews or increases in income. If we are to avoid the mistakes of the past, we must abandon forever the myopic view that the world owes us a living and will go on bankrolling us, whatever we do. Hard experience has taught us that such illusions will not sustain us, that we need a better way to secure the future. That way is transformation. In the long run, reform and transformation are the only sustainable paths to a sustainable financial position and high-quality services at this council. We need to refocus on our core business priorities. We need to increase productivity by working smarter and more efficiently. We need to take advantage of new technologies, and we need to reduce our cost base over the medium and long term. In short, we need to make a smaller council a better council. Reform is always a slow and difficult process, we know, but we have already made great strides in the past year. Getting the right people in the right jobs is half the battle. So we've introduced a comprehensive restructure of the strategic directors and hired new, high-quality assistant directors. And they're already doing sterling work to improve standards and have begun a programme of restructures across the entire organisation. And in 2024, our internal transformation is going to step up a gear. We will be carrying over the recruitment freeze into the new financial year and have set a budget challenge of over £500,000 worth of savings from existing vacancies. We will also continually reassess what the council ought to do, its core business, and what functions can better be delivered by other agencies. We need to ensure that local government can do the essential things well and have the confidence that individuals and communities can manage the desirable things well. That is why we have trusted communities to successfully manage their own assets in Stockingford and Kersley. This programme of reform will allow us to focus on the legitimate priorities for public spending. And it is because of our better management of the council finances that we have been able to address other high priority areas in this budget. Tonight, I can announce a number of new initiatives to advance our objectives of civic pride and public order. First, civic events. Now, we've already funded programmes of events to celebrate the Platinum Jubilee of Her Late Majesty and the coronation of His Majesty the King. These not only brought the community together and showed the patriotic spirit in our people, but they actually provided opportunities for local businesses like the artisan market or charities to have stalls. So I can announce tonight that we have again made £20,000 available to hold Party in the Park events this summer, with the aspiration to continue to hold them every summer in the coming years. The theme this year will be the 50th anniversary of the Golden Jubilee of this borough, and we'll announce the details in due course. Now, Mr. Mayor, for such an important anniversary, we want the borough to look its best. So I can announce tonight we have introduced new budgets of £60,000 for 2 additional sweeps of streets across the borough, £28,000 for power washing in the town centres, and £10,000 for cleaning up our rivers. Cleanliness and tidiness are not just important in helping pride in our towns. Cleaning up our roads and rivers will be a more practical way to help the environment than it would have been to spend some money on a climate change consultancy. The result on carbon emissions would have been nil. And we remain, Mr. Mayor, committed to improving our parks with the £75,000 playground upgrade fund that we included last year, now permanent and transferring to the capital budget. And we have also included £165,000 for footbridge repairs at Selby Way and Vale View. Now, Mr. Mayor, one of our most successful policies, as Councillor Golby will tell you, has been the tough stand we have taken against antisocial behaviour in housing, where we have introduced a zero tolerance policy. Our message is that a council house is a privilege and not a right. If your behaviour shows that you do not deserve a social house, we will take action and we will evict you. We have plenty of people on our waiting list who will behave appropriately. Now, we believe in the first and the most important civil right, which is the right to live in peace and without fear of crime in your own home or on the streets. And I therefore propose that £47,000 is made available in this budget to create another antisocial behaviour officer post this year to step up our efforts to protect tenants. Mr. Mayor, 2024 will also see the 3rd year of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund awarded to us by the Conservative government. As part of these schemes, we'll be spending £350,000 on more community projects to combat crime and antisocial behaviour, and another £375,000 for another programme of upgrades to our parks at Sorrel Road Park and the Marlborough and Attleborough recreation grounds. With these new initiatives, we are showing that we can still introduce policies to improve the lives of our people across the entire community, even as we repair our finances. The unprecedented rigour that we have brought to spending will allow the measures that I have just announced to be paid for without jeopardising the integrity of the Council's budget position. That means that our arithmetic will add up. It will not rely on fudge numbers, nor will it leave a black hole in the next budget like the opposition's £500,000 hole in the funding gap in the plans for the new Bedworth Leisure Centre that we inherited as soon as we came in 2021. Mr. Mayor, turning to the revenue side of the budget, I can confirm tonight that the borough precept for council tax will rise by 2.99% in the new financial year. None of us, Mr. Mayor, as I'm sure you know, want to raise taxes, but this is still substantially below the current rate of inflation and amounts to approximately 11.5% of the entire council tax bill paid by the resident. To keep the council financially solvent, we must try to keep our tax take as closely in line with inflation as possible and ask for residents' understanding as we do this. I can also confirm that the Council's relentless war on tax and rent avoidance will continue, as evidenced in the tougher debt recovery policies that we brought forward in 2023, so that all citizens are expected to pay their fair share. I also propose in the budget tonight to adjust our charging scheme as outlined in Appendix 3 of the reports before members to continue to pursue the principle of cost recovery. That means that the non-essential services we charge for are funded by those charges and not out of the general taxation. We forecast a revenue gain from this proposal of a further £55,000 in the coming year. I can confirm again tonight, Mr Mayor, that we will maintain our car parking charge offer at 3 hours for £1.50 because this provides the best deal for residents and the best way to drive footfall into our town centres. We will continue to resist calls to increase the charge from those who would put the flamethrower on our town centre economy for nothing more than ideological reasons. Neither do I propose to alter or increase the green bin tax or market stall charges, and it remains our long-term ambition to reduce them as and when the Council's finances permit. Now, Mr Mayor, this administration has been a pro-business administration, the results of which can be seen in quite monumental terms in the large-scale employers and developments choosing to set up here in our borough, such as Renus, Gibbs and Morrison's, which is forthcoming shortly. This support is based on the principle of reviving our economy. But a happy side effect is that we now see a benefit of £1 million in our business rates income this year and a surplus of another £1.1 million versus our projections last year. In addition to a new government grant of £550,000 and a £1.3 million grant of new homes bonus, these changes will provide us with a projected income of, again, over £19 million, which is £3 million higher than the draft budget for December. We have therefore balanced the budget with a surplus of £2,000 and substantial opportunities for in-year savings. So, Mr Mayor, before I conclude, I want to turn to what is perhaps the most important and substantive change that will be made in this budget, and I'm referring to the Regeneration and Capital Programme. There has been a great deal of comment on this and a great deal of misconception. Serious news outlets seem decided to use decidedly unserious sources, like Green Party Twitter accounts, in their reporting rather than wait to hear the facts. Well, the facts are this. Last year, the Cabinet became increasingly concerned about the impact of high inflation and high interest rates on the capital programme, and we directed officers to conduct assessments of their financial prospects in changed economic circumstances. This was the comprehensive review of our capital schemes to which I've referred at the last 2-3 councils. We finally received the results shortly before Christmas, which revealed that the economic and debt interest situation is now fundamentally different from when the programme was designed over 4 years ago. The original business cases, as designed in 2019-20, were not sufficiently flexible to cope with higher interest rates at the PWLB and higher inflation. Interest, Mr Mayor, is dead money, and to avoid a budget pressure, we must be offset by income from the regeneration projects in rent, service charge, profit share, and so on. If we had continued as we were, we would have taken out debt and had to pay £3 million each year on the general fund in interest payments alone for the next 40 years. That would have required stripping £3 million out of our outlays on top of the inflationary and pay pressures and gutting services. In short order, Mr Mayor, it would have bankrupted us. We had to get this future borrowing down. So we have altered the capital schemes so that there is no net impact on the general fund. That is the envelope that we set so that our income from regeneration is more than our debt interest payments. Some of these changes in the capital programme tonight are redesigns and some are rephases into the future. Firstly, Mr Mayor, I propose that MBBC no longer fund the project works at Wheat Street Junction, the Corporation Street and Queens Road junctions and the Weddington Cycle Link. These are transport schemes, Mr Mayor, which sit most appropriately with the County Council, and we do not consider that there is sufficient public demand for cycleways when compared to economic regeneration. We will be redesigning the Bridge to Living project to focus more on the residential aspect and take account of the changed circumstances when dealing with partners. I also propose to pause the museum refurbishment plans and reprofile that project to concentrate only on the Riversley Park upgrade. This is regrettable, Mr Mayor, but we believe that Grayson Place must take priority. Subject to government approval, these changes will reduce borrowing and release £8.2 million of Towns Fund grant monies to assist in completing these projects that we have prioritised. Chief among these is Grayson Place, which will be reprofiled into 3 phases. The first phase, the hotel, is nearing completion and will open this summer, not next summer, as has been reported. Phase 2 will now consist of the college, the cinema, the food hall, and the refurbished former India Red restaurant. While this is less than the original scheme, it represents the lion's share of that plan, and we are satisfied that it will ensure economic and civic revival of the town centre. We have also listened to public feedback and will be providing a surface car park instead of a multi-storey car park at lower cost. A new phase 3 of the scheme is now to be drawn up, which will explore the potential for the construction of residential housing on the remaining land. I propose, Mr Mayor, to make no changes to the e-mobility hub, visiting Nuneaton Changing Perspectives, George Eliot Visitor Centre and the Saints Project in this year's capital programme. These changes are still in discussion with the Central Government Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, and we expect to have the final confirmation in March, but we felt it was best to report our intentions now at budget setting in the interests of transparency, because you can see in the general fund that we don't project to borrow as much as the original capital programme said we would. Now, Mr Mayor, I know this is a subject close to your heart. I will take a moment to talk about Bedworth. Last year, we were forced to pause the programme for the new Bedworth Leisure Centre in the face of mounting material price inflation. In 2024, thanks to the heroic efforts of Councillor Markham, we have finalised the cost at £30.6 million, and the project will be proceeding with works to start on site this spring, so that we can finally give Bedworth the sports centre it deserves. Not only this, under the UK SPF, as Councillor Wilson has already alluded to, over £700,000 has been budgeted to help redevelop the Bedworth indoor market, which will not only support the market traders, but it will give a boost to the local economy by helping small businesses and startups with the extra space that we expect to be included in the design. Now, Mr Mayor, to reopen and rephase and redesign, and yes, to be blunt, save such a huge programme of regeneration in the face of daunting economic and financial challenges is a significant achievement in anybody's language. To do that in just 2 months since the report came in December is nothing short of remarkable. A weak administration would not have had the courage to make such a change. Now, Mr Mayor, I've kept council for quite a long time, so I'll begin to say in closing that in 2024 is going to be a critical year in the history of Nuneaton and Bedworth as the borough marks its 50th anniversary. It will be a period of great risk and great opportunity. This budget constitutes a vital component of a comprehensive vision, a well-thought-out strategy and an effective action plan designed to get Nuneaton and Bedworth moving once again. The Council's policies, after some substantial difficulties and some substantial changes, are now on track. They are now producing the results that we sought, results that our opponents said, and many commentators said, were not achievable in such a short time and against such long odds. Our party, the Conservative Party in control of this Council, is an inheritor of a great tradition of public service. True to this heritage, we are committing ourselves again to provide firm and purposeful leadership in the borough of Nuneaton and Bedworth, to building a borough which is worthy of the dreams of its founders 50 years ago and the aspirations of its people for their future in the next 50 years. This budget addresses those aspirations while continuing the policies of sound finance and reform to improve the quality of the Council's services. We have now set out our stall and we have shown our policies in practice. We have saved the regeneration programme at a time when many other councils have failed. We are restoring the Council's finances to a sustainable position. We are transforming the Council to provide a better service to our residents. We are reviving civic pride to create a cleaner, safer, more united borough. But a challenge remains, and that is to ensure that we stay the course, that the opportunities provided by these efforts do not pass us by. While the Conservatives retain control here at the Town Hall, we will pursue our targets with vigour and determination. A better life and a brighter future for all. A regenerated, prouder, cleaner borough that is strong, prosperous, united and free. We will not let Nuneaton and Bedworth slip back into mediocrity, either through lack of purpose or through weakness. We will keep to the task, and we will keep faith with our objectives. Having laid the foundations for that success, we now need the tools to finish the job. Very shortly, Mr. Mayor, the people of this borough will be called upon to make a choice. That choice will be between a return to the failed ways of the past just 3 short years ago, or to continue on the path that we have set to a brighter future. Now, to reach that future, we need the support of the people. We need their help. And given that, I do not believe for a moment that in the long run we should be pessimistic about what we can achieve for this borough, for our people, and for our future. That is the purpose of the budget tonight, Mr. Mayor, and I beg to move.
Thank you, Councillor Croft. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr.
Aye. Councillor Shepherd.
The proposal and Councillor Shires will be moving it. The papers are coming round now.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Okay, yeah, sorry. Do we have a seconder for that? Yep.
Who's proposed it? Who's proposing this now? Who's proposing it?
Proposing it? Yes. Would you like to speak on the budget?
Councillor Shire proposing.
You proposing? Propose. Emma's seconding.
Okay. Budget, because it comes under my portfolio, no? So the amendments put forward.
Do we wish to? Does any member wish to speak on this budget? Emma.
Thank you. Our amended budget is one that supports residents and our town. Efficiencies have been necessary due to the 14 years of consistent and constant local authority cuts from the Conservative government. While the current administration continue to freeze recruitment and reduce pay increases and continue to put pressure on our already hard-working officers, We plan on investing in our services to accommodate the opening of the Town Hall Monday to Friday, 9 till 5. Our fees and charges increase remains lower at 3%, and we have continued to protect licensing, car parks and green waste. We have again increased the gambling licence as we are committed to supporting residents to maintain positive mental health and avoid potentially uncontrollable debts. As I have said, we have had to make efficiencies, though we have tried to keep these fair with a 2% saving across all directorates. We are not increasing cemetery charges. At such a difficult time, it is unfair to add further financial pressures on those who are grieving. We will continue to support the third sector by not cutting any grants to services to such as Carver and CAB. We are always committed to supporting the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth. We have again put together a fair and balanced alternative budget that does not constantly cost residents while keeping the council finances at a surplus. In fact, an additional saving of over £5,000. We will continue to drive our finances forward while ensuring our communities and town centre remain at the forefront of all our decisions.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilson.
Mr Mayor, move an adjournment for 15 minutes so that we can consider the papers which have been laid before us tonight.
Can I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Golby. Any other comment before we adjourn? Councillor Shepherd. Do we need to take a vote on that? Or
I'd obviously second that motion and reserve my right to speak, and I just wanted to make sure that had been... Thank you.
thank you. Can vote on the adjournment to view the presented budget. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? That's carried, in which case we shall adjourn this meeting for 15 minutes, reconvene at 13 minutes past, thereabouts. Thank you. Public are quite welcome to stay behind. Thank you.
Council, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome His Worship, the Mayor of Nuneaton and Bedworth, Councillor Martin Walsh.
Thank you, everybody. We shall reconvene this meeting with debate on the opposition's budget. Thank you. Do I have a member wishing to speak? Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There's several things that I would like to raise about this amendment which does concern me. So the first part is around planning performance agreements, which in itself is a good thing, don't get me wrong. But the difference between our proposal and that of the Labour group is staggering, to the point that the Council's Section 151 officer, who I presume has written this amendment on behalf of the Labour group, has had to state there is a risk around this piece of work based on the scope of delivery and what the authority can charge. It's for that reason and that concern that I worry about the risk involved with this, this proposal. We see in the proposals the ability to award an additional £100,000 for environmental provision, but we don't know what that is actually for. And it would have been helpful if the leader of the Labour group could have outlined that in her opening remarks, and perhaps it's something that she would like to sum up on. But I don't feel comfortable voting in favour of something without knowing what that is actually for. On the comments that Councillor Shires made at the start of her statement around austerity, cuts, etc., well, actually, as the report in the main section highlights, actually, if you go into depth and look at the local government finance settlement for this year, when the provisional statement was announced in December, there were many errors, there were many faults within that settlement, but there was an intense lobbying campaign by members of Parliament, and actually councils of our size, of a similar structure and demographic, have actually been quite advantageous with that settlement. So I think it's fair to put that on the record. I think, first of all, I would like to make the point, actually, this is probably one of the final speeches I'll make in this chamber, and I have a lot of respect for Councillor Shires in actually putting forward an alternative suggestion. She's been my vice chairman on the Housing Scrutiny Committee, and she has actually been a brilliant vice chairman, and I've looked forward to whenever we've had external meetings to go in to those with her. I think this amendment does move on quite a lot to what we've had in the past. I think it's important that we remember that it was only a few years ago that there were discussions taking place by previous Labour group leaders about breaking Bedworth away and merging it into Coventry. And actually, if that actually went through and come to fruition, it would be Bedworth residents who would probably be facing an above-inflation tax rise in April. And I think it's right that we defended the rights of Bedworth residents to remain outside of the West Midlands and remain in Warwickshire. And those are the points that I'd like to make on the amendment. Thank you.
Any other speaker? On the amendment. Councillor Colby? Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Amendment, I just want to highlight a couple of things that are, show some inconsistencies. We have been criticised for the staff freezes, and yet there is nothing in here to remove those staff freezes. In fact, there is an arbitrary target of 2% saving across service areas, but there is no deep dive into where those service areas need to have savings, where we can apply further savings. Trust me, I'll speak about this later. We've been through everything with a fine-tooth comb, and I can't honestly say that this budget reflects that. So you could be taking 2% arbitrary targets from places that need more support, not less. And it's difficult to criticise that we are changing the staff freezes, or we're not changing the staff freezes when we have actually gone through that, and some of the staff freezes have been, well, some of the staff positions that are frozen have been there for years and we've taken them out. So there's been no evidence base for this at all, whereas I can safely say, and again I'll speak about that in my budget proposition, is that we have an abundance of evidence, but there is nothing reflected in here to give me any evidence that, that a 2% across the board is going to be beneficial to this council. I think we're going back to the old ways of just salami slicing, as was mentioned by Councillor Croft, without any sort of background knowledge as to what that could impact further on down the line. And trust me, with the stuff that we've been looking at, there have been significant impacts that we've had to deal with because of that very attitude. And I would caution against anybody wanting to go back to that If you're going to make a target, if you're going to make a cut, it has to have the evidence behind it to say that it's going to be worthwhile and the outcome is going to be more beneficial, not less. And I don't see that here. So I think I'll have to pass on this one, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Condacor.
Yeah. This budget process has been really difficult, and it's actually really half promising that the Labour group have managed to get the budget through the officers, because they have been particularly difficult with all the contracts that have been signed and what they allow and don't allow. We were talking about staff cuts, and Labour's proposing a 2% saving, and the Conservatives are proposing £500,000 staff saving. Both of them are things are very hard to support when you have a council that gets more and more dysfunctional the less workers it has. We need to be very careful that we don't think we can just have less people, because it's like these cartoons where you see a manager and then a supervisor and then two guys digging a hole, and you get rid of one guy digging the hole and then you get rid of the other guy digging the hole, and you just have supervisors with no one digging the hole. We can't just keep cutting. I am pleased with some things in the Labour budget, so I think as an amendment it is better than what the Tories are doing because of things like the cemetery charges. I haven't actually found in here, but I assume the charges for mobile homes are less as well. Because there are things that we're actually making a profit on that the Tories want to charge more for, and that is just unacceptable. So I will be supporting the Labour amendment, not because I like all the things in it. Our budget's far more radical, but at least it does some mitigation against the horrors.
Do I have any other speak? Councillor Beetham.
Shame that the Leader of the Opposition is on holiday today, as I would have loved to have heard his view on his party's budget. My last few budget speeches on the Opposition's amendments were very homework heavy. So in that vein, let's give them the final marks, considering that it's the last year for these councillors based on the budgetary and the promises they made at election. Last year's Labour budget left us in a planned deficit and used an enormous amount of reserves, so much so that Section 151 said it was just above the minimal compared with planned surplus. And what a change it would have been for us. Where would we be now? Would we be in similar situations such as Birmingham? But I'm very keen on keeping everyone honest to their promises. So saying that, let's have a look at some of their election promises and how it's in the budget, or not, as the case may be. The Northern Relief Road that we heard so much about coming up to election, it should have been in counties, wasn't there, not in last year's, not here. Another broken promise. Community centres, you said that be doom and gloom, the community centres would be over and that they'd be sold probably for some housing or something, but they're still there and they're still going extremely strong. But you haven't added any extra funding to the community centres in your budget. Either way, another broken promise for another year. Free parking at 3 p.m, another thing you were elected on. Nothing last year, nothing in this budget. In fact, you're increasing the cost of car parking season tickets. So again, another broken promise. You and your party have had 3 years to put together a budget that meets your election promises, and yet again, you haven't. Another broken promise, another mark of inadequate, and that is exactly what this is. Inadequate, an inadequate budget, and a budget of broken promises. I reject this wholeheartedly.
Do I have any other speaker on this subject? Councillor Wilson.
Some sympathy with Councillor Shies, because as someone who put forward shadow budgets for almost 10 years, I do know how difficult it is to do that. And it was always my aim and ambition to actually set the vision of what I would want to do from the opposition benches if I were to be fortunate to take control along with the Conservative group. So with that in mind, Mr Mayor, I give full marks for effort, but actually a fail on delivery, because the starting point really is our budget, as with any amendment. But if you look at the substantive differences between the two budgets as presented in the amendment, they've accepted all of our growth items. They've accepted the river cleaning, they've accepted the road sweeps, they've accepted the cleans of the town centres, they've accepted the extra bin wagons, they've accepted the works to the bridges. And what do they bring to the table, Mr Mayor? one additional customer services officer. That's it. That's all they bring to the table. And there is also a question mark whether that is actually necessary. And what we have in the savings or additional funding is, as has been alluded to, salami slicing. This is going back to the worst days of old Labour in control of this authority. If we proceed on that basis, again, we are fundamentally putting at risk the future financial stability of this council, and we cannot do that. We have just, on this on this side of the chamber, spent 3 long, hard years finally putting right the mistakes of decades of Labour failure to actually sort out the finances. In budgets gone past, former councillors Harvey and Jackson would put forward, it would be 5% savings here, 2% savings there, and every year we had a deficit budget where we had to make up that shortfall before we could get to the next year. Now, what does that mean in reality? Are the party opposite going to tell us what that means? Is that 1 cut less of all the grass across the borough that we're responsible? Is it 2 cuts less? Is it 3 cuts less to make £412,000? Is it less support to homelessness, where we are seeing a massive spend pressure in our authority? And we're not alone in that, Mr Mayor. Other authorities have pressure on homelessness. What does this mean in reality? Does it mean, Mr Mayor, that we aren't able to support our benefits claimants, some of the most vulnerable in our society, when they really need it? Does it mean that we can't actually get the planning applications through? Because if you're making yet another saving, you are actually proposing to put more pressure on the planning department than it can already bear. So if we look at this, it adds up. It adds up in the sense that 2 + 2 = 4. But there are significant klaxons going off to me in the wording of this report. So it says on paragraph G of the amendment, this is in relation to planning performance agreements, there is a current risk around this being difficult to achieve with the resourcing of the team. What do you do if you can't deliver that £60,000? Fees and charges only going up by 3%. Now, that may sound good on paper, but it actually means, with the inflation that we had last year and the inflation that we are currently going through this year, we will be subsidising, the taxpayer will be subsidising the non-essential jobs that people want. They're important to them, but it is not core business of this authority. And it is our belief that where you can pay for a service that is not a statutory service, you should cover the cost of what that is, so that others aren't paying for your benefit. It also has in here about river cleaning income, that there is a risk around this piece of work on top of the scope of delivery that the authority can charge. Where are you going to find that £7,000 if it doesn't come to fruition? It says about mobile phone savings, that there's a tender exercise underway at the moment, and the submissions for the contract will impact on the achievability of this saving. What are you going to do if you can't find that £8,000, Mr Mayor? This budget has more holes in it than a sieve, Mr Mayor, because it just does not stack up. You couldn't hold water with it. It would just fall through your hands, Mr Mayor. And they're talking about putting rents up, about the fees and charges. They're actually putting market rents up. Some of the people who are hardest pressed in our borough and those who actually come into trade, they are already struggling, and we have worked tirelessly to freeze the fees and charges on the markets where we can. But putting on another 3% could mean the difference between one trader coming 1 week and another trader coming in to trade the next. So really, Mr Mayor, it's a failure on all counts. And I note that there is nothing in here for the Civic Hall. Last budget they had a potential, maybe, £300,000. What are they going to tell the residents of Bedworth? Where's the money for that, Mr Mayor?
Member wish to speak? On the amendment, correct. I took that as an assumption. I see no indication, in which case... Sorry, Councillor Shepherd. Sorry there, Councillor Shepherd.
The full-time customer service officer has been mentioned to ensure the town hall's open 9 to 5 on a Monday to Friday. Residents have raised this as a major concern, that they can't get in this building to speak to someone when they're in desperate need, except for between 2 and 10, and then buy an appointment. That is ridiculous. This is a civic building, and a public building that actually the residents should be entitled to come into. 2% savings across the service area. Yes, we put it in. We haven't taken in done the vacancy savings. That was a choice of the Labour administration and has been signed off by the 151 officer.
Indeed, yes. See what it is.
Wilson has raised a point of order, and under the Constitution it's after I've spoken, not in the middle.
I apologise.
Increase of 3%, excluding car parks, cemeteries and greenways. The cemeteries, no, we haven't put the rate. We feel the rates are high enough and we don't wish to tax anymore. River clearance offered to other authorities. I'm aware this can be achieved with engagement with other authorities, which actually hasn't been done. Mobile phone savings are achievable. The contract is due for renewal, and we're aware many of the mobile phones are still in office drawers and unused. Gambling licences, yes, we have put them up to 5%, and I think it's to outweigh the harm to families and individuals due to gambling addiction. We have put 5% on mobile home sites, and a small rise of £5 on season tickets. And we've said we'll work with partners to improve parks in Sorrel Road, Attleborough Recreation Ground, Marlborough Park, and we've put in a surplus of £5,095, which will go back into the general fund. We have put in the 100,000 for environmental projects, and that is for us to decide what we're going to do with this, and we take control back of this council. So, in concluding in the document, yes, it's been signed off by the 1-5 officer. Difficult decisions this year, but the reduce again of our grant and all the other things that we had to take into consideration. But this budget balances and puts a bit more surplus into the general fund. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Wilson, your point of clarification.
To clarify what was just said by the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, because she's just said that they will not be implementing the staffing vacancy freeze. Now, if that is the case, then the budget paper should either say, as part of the resolution to help things balance, that it does not include the freeze, because this is an amendment, so you need to deliberately take that out, or it's not reflected in the table at C, because it would show either growth or a reversing of the amount allowed for the freeze. So I think we need to be absolutely crystal clear on the proposal which is before us, because I can't see anything in here, Mr. Mayor, which actually says that that is reversed, but that is what the Deputy Leader of the Opposition has just said. So can we have clarification on that, please?
Fine. Oh, well, sorry, apologies.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Thank you. So we've looked at central provisions, and there's some elements of central provisions that have been reduced initially for them to balance the budgets. Now that is certain areas around, there'd be around different spend around capital, those sorts of things that we would have to reduce. Other than that, it'd be around individual service area savings that might be made during the year. So if there was some proposals put forward by the Labour group, that individual officers would then feed through to Labour group and determine which savings they could make and which ones they wouldn't. There is expected to be some savings in year, but other than that, it'd be around provisions that are put forward.
But that doesn't specifically say here that it...
So the recruitment freeze, that's separate to this completely. This is the 412 that's in here. You've got a 500,000 recruitment freeze. This is 412. This is they're different. They are different things. Yeah, they are different things. So that.
But it's not been removed in the resolution before us.
No, it's still in the resolution.
If they haven't said it's coming out, it's still there because it's an amendment what we've put forward.
The base budget that you're starting from, the base position you're starting from, that would be the deficit position after everything else was considered that we knew about already. So not the recruitment freeze, just where we'd started from the 4 million, the bits that we know about from an income perspective, we've reduced then the deficit down, and we started with the 493 then to try and to try and bridge that gap. So that was at a £5 council tax increase. It was those things that were already in there. So from there, then it was down to the Labour group to make that decision around how they would close that £500,000 gap.
Are we clear of what's been said or proposed?
I'm correctly. This is an amendment to what was presented by us tonight. That was what was presented, and what was presented to us includes a recruitment freeze. Now, if we pass their resolution tonight, their resolution does not expressly remove the provision of a recruitment freeze. Therefore, either Councillor Shepherd and Shires have removed it, but it's not in here, in which case that's not what they moved and it's an illegal budget, or it means that this isn't written correctly, in which case I can't vote on it in either way and would have to vote it down because I don't think actually it stacks up.
Yes, Councillor Condacor, what was your...
If it helps, we were given, so it started from the 4 million deficit. So I don't think Labour's done anything wrong, if it helps.
Okay. It is an amendment to the motion that we put forward as our budget. Is that correct? Yes. Yes. And it doesn't clarify... It doesn't take anything out with regards to the freeze. In which case they can't... The saving is not there, is what we're saying. Yes. Pass you over to Brent.
Okay. So hopefully to try and clarify the situation, the alternative budget that Labour have proposed here does not include the £500,000 worth of vacancy freeze. Instead of that £500,000 worth of savings, a large proportion of that is the 2% savings across service areas that account for 412, and then some of the other bracketed figures underneath that. So it does not include the £500,000 worth of vacancy freeze. It doesn't say that on I accept that, but hopefully that is clarified so members are able to vote in the knowledge of what this does and does not include, but it does not include the £500,000 worth of vacancy savings that was in the is in the Conservative budget proposed by Councillor Croft.
Councillor Croft.
Mayor, I promise Council and members of the public that I will speak at considerably less length on this one, and like Councillor Wilson, I do want to thank the opposition members for providing a shadow budget. I take the point of the Section 151 officer and the Chief Executive of the Council that the changes that Councillor Shepherd alluded to are contained in the table at Appendix A. Unfortunately, this means that the budget is even more irresponsible and less well planned out from a political perspective than we thought. Because what we have proposed is a serious programme of transformation to take those vacancies which are currently unfilled on the staffing front and in some cases have been unfilled for some considerable time and put them through a meticulous, well thought out restructure programme to bank those savings and drive efficiency. Now, what is the Labour Party proposing, Mr Mayor? Oh, well, just 2%. 2% all over the place. That does not work. And I tried that in the first sort of 10 minutes that I was in the portfolio. Shockingly, that is amateur hour stuff. It does not work and you do not do it. So where are the savings coming? Where are the savings coming? You can't propose efficiency savings, unfunded efficiency savings, and then say, but we're not touching staff vacancies. You can't say that we've got to take on another customer service operative, but also we're going to make efficiency savings. The reason the customer service centre has reduced hours is for the purpose of driving efficiencies. That is why I did it fairly early on in the term, because those people who need to come in can make appointments and they don't just sit around in the waiting room for hours. If people need to contact us, they can get in touch with us by phone. Or if they're genuinely frail and they can't travel, we can organise bespoke appointments. You can't just come up with some populist wheeze of taking on another full-time officer just because you think it'll be a quick win in the newspapers. So, Mr Mayor, these savings are not achievable, and this is a paucity of imagination from a party that is supposed to be heading for control. This is the best that they can come up with. In the capital programme, they've put £100,000 in the capital programme, and another sort of bait and switch policy where they're, we'll just stick it in and we'll work out the details later. But everybody knows, and we've come up against this before, that it's all very well paying for something in capital, but then next year you've got to pay for something out of the revenue. You've got to pay for the upkeep costs. So we've got a further risk to the council's finances based on this shadow budget, and the word risk appears an awful lot in these papers because it's the sort of things that you can technically get away with it, but in terms of a serious professional corporate approach to running a council, it is not the way to go. And Councillor Wilson and Councillor Golby are quite right. We have spent many hours at great and tedious length, and the officers can corroborate this as well if you ask them, because they didn't like it really. But we have gone through this budget line by line. We have gone and we have challenged, and we have taken a proper professional corporate approach to it. You can't just go back to the old days where you let someone else do the running and just sort of drop 2% in there and say, just work it out. That doesn't work. Mr Mayor, the council tax ban, as I explained in the main budget presentation, we have the choice, but from a financial sustainability perspective, we're very well advised to raise council tax by the maximum amount, because otherwise you reduce the tax base when you come to the next budget setting and the budget setting after that, so that in future years you have once again reduced your scope for income, and that £500,000 worth of savings, which is take out £500,000 of vacancy savings, put in £500,000 of savings from unspecified efficiencies, you would have to find more of those. So, Mr Mayor, I'm afraid I certainly shan't be voting for it. It is exactly the kind of approach that we have tried to get away from. It is exactly the kind of bait-and-switch politics from the Labour Party that we saw at the last two elections, and it is exactly the kind of unprofessional approach that we have tried to rip out of this organisation over the last 3 years.
Thank you, Councillor Croft. At this point, we move to a vote on the opposition's recorded vote. We are voting on the opposition's proposed budget, the amendment. Those in favour? Sorry, apologies, yes, recorded.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So as I call out each councillor's name, if you could indicate to me whether you're for the Labour Party alternative budget, against it, or you wish to abstain. Councillor Baxter Payne. Councillor Beetham. Councillor Brown. Councillor Clark. Councillor Cooper. Councillor Coventry Morton. Councillor Croft. Councillor Kovetowicz. Councillor Evans. Councillor Golby. Councillor Green. Councillor Guttridge. Councillor Hartshorn. Councillor Condacor. Councillor Markham. Councillor Morton. Councillor Pandair. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Jill Shepherd. Councillor Tracy Shepherd. Councillor Shires. Councillor Singh. Councillor Smith. Councillor Mandy Tromans. Councillor Rob Tromans. Councillor Walsh. Councillor Wilson. And Councillor Wright. That motion is lost.
That motion is lost. Do we have any other proposals? Councillor Condacor.
And it's been quite a good demonstration of how messy the budget process has been with spreadsheets which we all work from. I did produce a budget that is costed, and a budget that would have effectively increased the council tax by 1.7%. A fairer charging, it has fairer charging for car parking and services, alongside less reckless programme for regeneration. On green waste, I wanted to offer residents a £34 offer on the recycling, so the green waste could start 9 months in, and also half.
Putting forward a proposed alternative budget, or are you speaking against the proposed budget?
I'm speaking against the proposed budget by demonstrating what I'd have done instead.
Proposing alternative budget.
I would like to propose an alternative budget, so I'll tell you what I'd like to propose, and then I'll tell you why I can't propose it. Right, I'm going to carry on, if I may.
Hold fire. I'll pass that forward to Chief Executive.
Just to clarify, for any alternative budget to be proposed, that needs to be signed off as an appropriate and legal budget by the Section 151 officer. No such proposal in terms of the Green Party has been signed off by the Section 151 officer.
In which case, if you wish to debate the proposal by the Conservative Party, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm sorry.
So I'm telling you what I would do in a Green budget on a budget debate. I can only talk about... I would like 3 minutes to explain my position.
Councillor Condacor, please. I think the Chief Executive was clear in what he said with regards to the fact that if you wish to present an alternative budget, it would have needed to be signed off by the 151 officer as being appropriate and balanced. As that's not the case, you're not here to present a fantasy budget that you might wish to do so. If you wish to speak on the budget as down by the presented to yourself, that's a different matter. Point of order, yes, Councillor Croft.
Of the Constitution, because it slipped my mind, but under the rules of debate on relevant matters, I do think it would be in order for Councillor Condacor to talk in abstract terms about alternatives, even if he is not able to move a resolution, because I'd really like to hear what he's got to say.
in which case I'll give you some airtime if you wish to speak against or your alternative, but not, it is not an alternative budget you are presenting.
Yeah, the type of things I wanted to do, which the Conservatives don't do, is effectively clamp down on some of the issues we've got with parking. We've lost a lot of people who stay for short whiles in our car parks. They keep crowing about people on average stay longer, when in fact they've lost car parking income. And it's because they don't have a 1 hour parking charge. So I was wanting to propose £1 for 1 hour and then either £1 or 50p for the next hour. We have a massive problem with ticket swapping. We have lots and lots of other similar problems, particularly at the road walk with people driving out after our parking attendants have opened up. I wanted to make fundamental changes to our parking charges so there are fairer and there are less fraud. This actually was fraud against the council taxpayers. By sorting out parking charges and investing in parking charges, unfortunately, at the leisure centres, we can start to afford £30.6 million to build a new leisure centre. We can afford to keep Passport to Leisure because we will actually manage things properly. And this is why I started, like the Conservatives, from the base down and worked out how you charge for things like parking. And unfortunately, the officers are not happy to sign that off because of various contractual things and how things are different. Likewise on green waste, I think we should offer people a part-year solution. If it comes around to July or August, we should be selling tickets to people at a slightly reduced rate to get them to buy into our recycling service. And that way we can get more recycling credits. I'm really keen that we make Grayson Place a success. And yeah, I'm really pleased with the changes to actually descale it. I have been against the multi-storey car park for years. So the Conservative changes to a greener Grayson Place, I really like. They should have done it 3 years ago. They shouldn't have built a multi-storey car park. They should have had the cinema. The hotel was started by Labour so that when you crow about your success, the only thing you'll finished in 3 years was actually started by the Labour administration at a massive cost. And you talk about risk, and you talk about risk in the Labour budget. You are building a £20 to £28 million hotel, which you do not know how it will operate or what profit it will make, and then you're building a £30 million leisure centre. So I don't know how you moan about people having one extra receptionist on reception as being risky, when you're blowing so much money, and your level of debt is totally obscene. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
But as a point of order, I'd like to move a suspension of standing orders so that we can continue debate beyond 3 hours and enable business to be concluded tonight.
Second. Yes, straight to the vote then, please. Suspension of standing orders so as to extend the meeting. Those in favour? Those against? And abstentions? I think that's carried anyway. Thank you. Councillor Evans, you wish to speak.
Councillors have to operate within the law and alongside contractual agreements when setting a balanced budget. But nevertheless, in welcoming the zero-based budgeting approach that has now been adopted by the Conservative administration, I wish to place on record my general support for the transformation agenda that is now being followed at this authority. Moving this council from decades of stagnation into the modern age and with a commercial mindset, as opposed to forcing taxpayers in Bedworth to bail out a failing asset year by year to the tune of £800,000. I want to place on in support my view that we need to do an awful lot more in this borough around civic pride and public realm, and it's why I'm pleased to see a number of growth items placed within this budget to support that. For example, £28,000 towards power washing of our town centres. I welcome the fact that we're seeing the recruitment of a new antisocial behaviour officer to combat some of the ASB that we're seeing in places like in Bedworth Town Centre, and I welcome some of the work that Councillor Coventry Mawson is doing alongside our PCSOs, and I know that a new ASB officer will strengthen our arm to combat nuisance that is being caused to good people. In addition, I wish to say that I welcome the fact that whilst we are making reductions in certain areas of the council, we're also making reductions to the way in which we as councillors operate. We're getting rid of members' expenses. We're removing the race equality budget. And those are things that I welcome. So, in summarising, I know that a number of the actions that we have taken as an administration over the last 3 years have been difficult. Some of those decisions we didn't really want to take, but they were decisions that were necessary for the financial sustainability of this council. And I know it may be the case that some of us are not returning to this chamber after May. Some of us may be standing down. Some of us may lose our seats. But I, for one, can say to people in the future that it was our record of reform, competency, and growth that we can be proud of. It's a record I'm proud of, and it's a record that we should collectively be proud of. Councillor Croft, thank you.
Councillor Beetham.
I promised residents a better play park for Stockingford Rec. I can safely say that this Conservative council has just done that. For almost 3 years, I had been nagging Councillor Guttridge and his team to improve it, and I know they'll be relieved to hear that they will no longer have to listen to my voice for much longer, as I'm not seeking re-election. I know as a Conservative council we've invested record amounts into Stockingford Rec. In this current year, this Conservative council invested over 4.5 times more than Labour did in their last year in power on play area capital and play area maintenance. And on average, since Kingswood gained a Conservative councillor and a Conservative Borough council, we've invested on average 1.5 times more a year on play area of what Nuneaton News had previously called an abandoned park. And this budget reinforces that, allowing other play areas to have the same treatment as Stockingford Rec has done, which is why I support this budget wholeheartedly. It cements the fund that allows the other parks that were forgotten under Labour to get that investment. So I say, Councillor Guttridge, thank you for your time and the team, and I commend this.
Councillor Brown.
I've been working as a civil servant for nearly 40 years. When I joined the civil service, we had a budget process that's much like the Labour proposal tonight, of budgets being salami sliced, cut back across all departments by 1% or 2% here and there. And I remember the way of working where you would get to January, February in the year, and some vital piece of equipment had failed and we couldn't replace it. Or we would get to that point in the year and we hadn't spent the budget and there was a massive rush to buy anything we could to maintain the budget spend so we could justify having the same amount of money next year. And that's why I so welcome the fact that we've now gone to this zero-based budgeting, where Councillor Croft and his colleagues have gone through thousands of lines of budget items and challenged officers to justify each and every one of them. That's why we've arrived at the budget that we have this time. If you were to compare this to restoring a car, it's about taking it back to base, stripping it apart, refurbishing it, preparing it properly, and putting it back together properly so that it will go and work and last into the future, as opposed to the Labour version, which is just give it a quick respray, put it in the showroom, get rid of it before the rust shows through again. So I absolutely welcome the things that we're doing. The fact that we're going to be able to deliver a new leisure centre for Bedworth, for example. You know, the existing building is much loved, but it's coming to the end of its natural life. You know, we don't want to let it get into a position like the skate park was let to get, where there was no maintenance budget for it, and it got to the point of danger and had to be taken away. You know, it's not exactly blowing £30 million, Councillor Condacor. Do you want to wait for the roof to fall on some swimmer's head and then decide that we're going to find the money to do it? But we've found the money to do this. You know, it's taken an awful lot of work to rebalance this particular project to make sure that we can deliver it properly. So, to sum up on this, we've seen a shadow budget that's actually more of a shadow of a budget rather than an actual budget. In fact, they don't even know what's in it themselves. We had to have a quick adjournment to work out whether something was included or not, whether the figures were there. And then we've had the Emperor's new budget, which is a claimed budget, but it's actually just some fantasy that doesn't really exist. So given the proper restoration job or the budget car salesman spray it quick version, I think I'll vote with the Conservative version, which is the real thing. Thank you.
To speak? Councillor Wilson. Councillor.
Thank you. So, first of all, I can't believe that we witnessed the spectacle of all the parties opposite actually voting against extending standing orders to enable us to actually vote through all the budgets tonight. That, to me, that tells me that they're more interested in going home than actually in setting the legal budgets necessary for the residents of this borough, and they deserve far better than that, Mr. Mayor. They deserve a serious council that deals with serious problems and puts serious solutions in place. Now, we've heard a lot of... It's not on what she said. She hasn't said anything about it.
Sorry, you've just said that we're not interested in setting the budget for people. And actually, that is unfair. The reason I voted against that is because I actually need to get home to 2 children for their childminder. So it's not actually for the sake that it's not for Nuneaton and Bedworth residents or anything like that. It's just that I know I have a limit. And I have a young boy who will not go to bed, will not go to sleep until mummy is there. So it is really not about saying that I don't think about Nuneaton and Bedworth residents, but I actually have 2 SEND children, and I do know that I am on a clock and I need to be there. So please do not cast aspersions and tar us under a brush that it's because we don't remembering that some of us have families.
Councillor Shires, you can excuse yourself at any moment in any moment in time.
But I'd like to stay for it all because it's my residents as well.
But I've listened to you. I didn't talk over you, Councillor Shires. But if your circumstances, if Councillor Shires' circumstances dictate that she has to leave, that happens to everyone. But that doesn't preclude her from voting to enable the rest of the business to continue, while she has to absent herself for legitimate purposes. That is entirely possible. But she could have voted to enable us to conclude business tonight, and she didn't. That's a statement of fact. Now, we've heard a lot of guff tonight, Mr. Mayor, about cutting Carver and CAB funding. That's a lie. We haven't. The budget papers quite clearly say that. There's nothing in the budget papers to say that anything's going to change to the passport to leisure. That's yet another shadow puppet being created by the Green Party to try and create another bandwagon to jump on when none exist. No one anywhere at any point tonight mentioned passport to leisure until Councillor Condacor. We have not held back staff pay in this authority. Newsflash, Mr. Mayor, we don't set the staff pay. It is set through a national joint committee where the unions feed in, the councils feed in, and that sets the national pay award across all councils. We haven't done that one bit. Whatever has been said out of the national joint negotiating committee, we have passed and made the provision, even in extremely difficult circumstances. We have done that. Councillor Condacor stood there and said he wants the cinema. Not too long ago, he was criticising us for actually putting a cinema in, and actually saying, oh, it's going to cost us money, it's going to be a failure, it's putting the taxpayers at risk. There's more positions than the hokey-cokey in there, Mr. Mayor. What is it? We want a cinema or we don't? Please just tell us the truth. Do we want a cinema or not? In my view, yes, we do. And to make sure that the hotel operates effectively, we are doing no more and no less than what is industry standard, which is we are setting up an external company to manage it, manage our liabilities, and ensure that no additional expenditure than is necessary is incurred by the council. Lots of other places do it, we're no different. And in actual fact, we have a general manager who is in the process of being appointed by Hampton by Hilton, who has passed all their requirements for their business need, and they are from that sector. They aren't imposed by us as a council, they don't come from the council at all, no public sector background as far as I'm aware. They come from that commerciality. Now, this budget actually does far more than we actually thought possible to begin with. The £4 million was very, very daunting to begin with. But look at what we have achieved. Not only have we balanced the books, Mr. Mayor, we have taken as little as we need from residents. We have only asked residents to pay for what they use. We have asked residents to pay less than the rate of inflation. Don't forget, when we set our budget last year and we went for the council tax of 2.99, that was before inflation even hit 10%. So the pressures that this council has faced, we have managed even with a 7% gap in our funding from when we set the budget originally last year. And again, another gap this year because inflation is running at 4% and our budget is at 2.99%. I think that is more than fair, Mr. Mayor. As the great Judge Judy says, if you buy the steak, you've got to pay. If you eat the steak, you've got to pay for it, Mr. Mayor. That is the way of the world. You can't just keep living off a free load. And what we have delivered extra cleaning, which residents want. We have delivered increased cleaning of the River Anchor, which is an untapped natural feature of our council and our area, which I'm sure many of us would love to open up even more than we already do, but there's financial constraints. We have put in that provision for cleaning our town centres. We have put extra money in for an antisocial behaviour officer to deal with those who refuse to abide by the rules and make everyone else's lives a misery. There's no freeloading in this world, Mr. Mayor, under this council. You either play by the rules or we put someone into the house who does deserve it, who will play by the rules and genuinely deserves to have a roof over their head. And I'm proud of the legacy that Councillor Golby has built, because that means that more people who are in genuine need are getting the help that they need when they need it. And also, we are putting in the bridge repair work, which is woefully under-resourced when we came in. There are 2 bridges now that are close to needing to be mothballed, but we are putting in 165k to ensure that those vital connectivity between different communities are protected. And let us think about over the past 3 years. We have seen under this authority the largest investment in children, families and play areas than we have ever seen in at least 20 to 30 years. That means that far more residents and families and children are getting to enjoy better provision in their local areas and in our premier parks than they ever did before. Let's just look at the list. Wenbrook, when we went up there with Councillor Gutteridge, 2 pieces of working equipment. Now it's a fully functional park. We're completely redoing Sherborne Avenue. We've put more equipment into Kersley. We've put more equipment into Stockingford, and we're dealing with the disused tennis court as well, which is an eyesore. We have put in more equipment into the Miners' Park. We have completely refurbished Buttermere Park, completely replaced it and enhanced it, and made it disability accessible for the first time ever, one of the very few disability accessible parks anywhere in the area. And we've delivered it on time and on budget, and it will be open in the next few weeks, Mr. Mayor. We have delivered the Jubilee BMX track lighting as part of the UK SPF, ensuring that our youngsters have a safe, secure environment to enjoy themselves, Mr. Mayor. We delivered the cycle track in Bedworth on time and on budget. We're upgrading Sorrel Road, Attleborough Rec and Marlborough Rec for the first time that those recreation grounds have seen in years, and local residents have cried out for. And we've put more into Bulkington Rec, which I know the local members have called for, and we have put in £75,000 extra a year to ensure that we never get to the position that we had again, where all we could do was take out equipment or make do amend and hope for the best. We are putting in that investment into the future of our young children's lives and ensuring that families have something to do. This budget offers something for all. Their budget offered nothing for everyone. And I commend this budget to the Chamber, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Croft.
Wilson has covered most of the points raised in the debate, and I spoke at inordinate length earlier this evening. There is one point that was raised in debate that I do want to make absolutely clear, so it is on the record of the Council, that Section 151 of the Local Government Act requires that local authorities hire an officer who is a qualified accountant who can sign off balanced and sustainable budgets. That is a requirement of the law. And, Mr Mayor, Councillor Condacor might be the sort of perfect example as to why the framers of the legislation in Parliament did that. I mean, you know, he's not an accountant, I'm not sure what he is, but his armchair accounting is not sufficient to overcome very serious professional objections to sort of schemes that have been plucked out of the air. And I do want to just sort of emphatically rebuff any of the sort of implications that we have heard made this evening, that the officers were not helpful, the officers were not constructive. We have some excellent finance officers. I've even in 3 years worked with 3 Section 151 officers. I didn't think very much to one of them. I liked another one, but the Director Summerfield is one of the finest public servants I have ever come across and have ever worked with, who is the model of professionalism and the model of professional expertise. And I will not have Councillor Condacor coming out with that absolute load of nonsense. What he proposed was not balanced and sustainable, and the fact that he said it was is not a professional sign-off. I'm sorry, it is not, and that needs to be really clearly understood in the press and the social media, that what he would have put forward would have been financially unviable for the council, and to blame the officers for his failings is not good enough. And I wanted to read that into the record of the meeting, Mr Mayor. As for the budget, Councillor Wilson and I have covered a great deal of the points. I'm very pleased with how the General Fund budget has turned out this year. We have finally been able to move to a much more professional and corporate approach. We have been able to continue the programme of reviving civic pride, of improving the playgrounds, of improving the look of the area, of supporting law and order, and we will continue in this vein should we be returned to office. So I move the budget, Mr Mayor.
We move to the vote, which is a recorded vote, so I'll pass it over to Brent, the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As I read out councillors' names, if they could indicate whether they are for, against or wish to abstain for the General Fund revenue budget as proposed by Councillor Croft. Councillor Baxter-Payne. Councillor Beetham. Councillor Brown. Councillor Clark. Councillor Cooper. Councillor Coventry-Morton. Councillor Croft. Councillor Kovacevic. I think Councillor Evans has left the chamber. Yep. Councillor Golby. Councillor Green. Councillor Guttridge. Councillor Hartshorn. Councillor Condacor.
Against.
Councillor Markham. Councillor Morton. Councillor Pandare. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Jill Shepherd. Councillor Tracy Shepherd. Councillor Shires. Councillor Singh. Councillor Smith. Councillor Mandy Tromans. Councillor Rob Tromans. Councillor Walsh. Councillor Wilson. And Councillor Wright. Thank you. That motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. We move forward to item number 11E, the Housing Revenue Accounts Budget for 24-25. Called on Councillor Golby.
Let me move a few bits about. So tonight, Mr Mayor, I will be presenting the Council's Housing Revenue Account Budget. I stand here resolute, determined not to let the noise and distractions of recent weeks get in the way of what needs to be done, remaining focused on the challenges and opportunities which lie ahead for our borough. This is a moment of reckoning, a chance for me to lay bare the harsh realities of the financial decisions made by our Labour predecessors and the opportunity to acknowledge the strides we Conservatives have made since taking control. Mr Mayor, I've said many times in this chamber that if our Conservative group had not taken control of this council when we did, this council would undoubtedly be bankrupt. This wasn't just a flippant remark. I meant every word, and tonight I'll finally be able to tell people how I know this for sure. Literally, since our first day in control, not even 3 years ago, we were met by challenges caused by the previous Labour incumbents, poor financial management, poor project decision-making and lack of forward planning. Our first red flag was the Bedworth Physical Activity Hub not being fully funded, and it's been one thing after another ever since. Luckily, we've built our finance team up to the excellent strength that we have today, and together we have left no stone unturned with this budget. I've said before, we keep lifting up the carpet and finding what Labour has swept under, and boy, there was a lot. In the last 12 months or so, this Conservative administration has put the inner workings of our council under the microscope, subjected it to intense scrutiny and examination, stress testing to see where failures could occur, and quite rightly so. It was obvious that nothing like this had ever been done before. The revelations of past mismanagement have been absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking. But given who the succession of decision makers have been, it's not been a surprise. They have without doubt cast a long shadow over our HRA financial landscape, and with it the potential of this council. This is where the stark reality of past mismanagement has truly come to light. Most of the financial issues have been traced back to decisions made by Labour in 2012. I've spoken previously about how in 2012 the council needed to buy its council housing stock back off the government. Now you can argue the rights and wrongs of this till the cows come home. But the upshot was a debt was secured to do this with numerous loans over a lengthy period of time. The intention appears to be to refinance this debt every time repayment was due, effectively never paying off the debt, simply building more and more and more debt. This debt burden has weighed heavily on our shoulders and threatened to derail the financial stability of this council. At the same time as having mortgage payments and only paying off the interest, at the end of the repayments, you still have the main debt to clear. So, Mr Mayor, what did we discover that was so awful? Well, to put it simply, the business plan we inherited would have left us with an outstanding debt, this is a debt, of close to £300 million. That's over £250 million related to the housing revenue account. Mr Mayor, not only would we have continually had to borrow to pay back, but at the end of the business plan term, we would have still been left with an outstanding debt of over £250 million. That is a financial extinction level event for this organisation. In fact, we wouldn't have even got that far. It would have ended us well before that. And I can't even get my head around how it was signed off as being sustainable. I can't impress on people enough just what a mess we've had to unpick. The Labour Party should be thoroughly ashamed for what they've done. And to be absolutely clear, this isn't me politicising anything here. These are the figures that have been worked out by our finance team and their detailed, almost forensic analysis of what has gone before. This is also why we are still conducting a detailed review of the housing revenue account business plan. The mitigating actions we're taking today is for us to completely reassess and rewrite the business plan. That's why I'm only proposing a one-year stopgap budget today. That's basically gives us a bit of time to actually do the continuing due diligence and put the effort in to get things right. I'd also like to make it clear that in the meantime, the debt repayments will be managed within the business plan. But we won't end up with anywhere near the predicted levels should we have simply carried on as we were. All of these reviews will be happening while we continue to sort out the backlog of works and get the housing stock up to a manageable standard. So not only are we trying to do business as usual, but we're trying to sort out all of this stuff going on in the background as well. And that I cannot impress on that enough. Mr Mayor, I have been publicly criticised by certain people for not producing information quickly enough. Complaints about not producing HRA business plan or the plan of what we're doing with the garage sites, to these people I say, the state we found this council in, not just the HRA but across the board, warrants the time it's taken to get to this point. Measure twice, cut once. I can also confirm that on our current schedule, a full breakdown of the financial plan and reserves will be reported to Cabinet in autumn, although this may be subject to change should we find anything else that requires more in-depth investigation. So I'm not committing to a timeline yet because I genuinely don't know whether we're going to need to extend or not, because we keep finding all these little nasties waiting for us. It's easy for those carping from the sidelines on who any normal day misrepresents what's happening at this council, who tweet inaccurate and ill-informed information when they actually have no idea what's been going on or the monumental effort which has been put in by a small number of people to get this financial juggernaut back on a straight road. But the people of the borough need to know. And now, today, finally, I can actually get it off my chest. Labour were asleep at the wheel, driving all of us headlong to financial oblivion in exactly the same way we've seen happening in Birmingham. They simply cannot add up. No strategy, no plan, no clue. But tonight, I don't just want to talk about the financial and next-level incompetence of past decision makers. I also want to talk about the hope and resilience of my teams. I'm a leader committed to facing the challenges head-on and forging a path towards prosperity. Over the past 12 months, our council has undertaken a comprehensive process of internal reforms, restructuring our teams, streamlining our operations, and making the tough decisions necessary to set us on a course towards sustainability and success. My housing and communities team have been no exception. And Mr. Mayor, let me be clear, this is not over yet. The road ahead will not be easy. It will require sacrifices, tough choices, and unwavering resolve. But in the face of adversity, we must be guided by the conservative principles of prudence, accountability to the taxpayer, and transparency. I'm pleased to say that after all of our work, the HRA budget position for the upcoming year is actually balanced. But it doesn't come without challenges. A rent increase of 7.7% is proposed, a measure that may not be popular, but one that is necessary to ensure the long-term financial health of our HRA. I also need to be clear that this takes our average rent to £95.69 per week. And that's well under the local housing allowance, which is £155.34 per week. And the majority of our tenants are actually eligible for assistance with their rent, so it's not a direct hit to their pockets. Mr. Mayor, this year we are not increasing garage rents, although I would like to confirm that we do have a waiting list for people who want to rent a garage from us, even at the increased rates as set out in the last budget, which was provided an uplift to overall rental income. Amidst the challenges, there are reasons for optimism. Our commitment to new build projects continues unabated, with new homes set to provide much-needed revenue streams for the council. From Vale View to Byford Court, from Armson Road to Chevrolet Road, these projects represent not just bricks and mortar, but hope and opportunity for our residents. Mr. Mayor, our efforts extend beyond the realm of construction. We're investing in the future of our borough in countless ways, from upgrading the housing stock to enhancing the quality of life for our residents. Let me share with you some of the remarkable achievements that we've accomplished on behalf of our communities, all against the backdrop of Labour's ticking financial time bomb. We have embarked on a comprehensive programme of repairs and maintenance, ensuring that our housing stock remains safe, secure and of the highest quality. From new kitchens and bathrooms to upgraded heating systems and fire safety measures, the old outdated ways of service provision have been changed in order to provide the best possible living conditions for our tenants. We've made significant investments in tenant support and engagement, recognising that our residents are more than just tenants, they're our neighbours, our friends and the backbones of our communities. I've overseen the restructuring of our housing and communities teams to better reflect our borough, its needs and this Conservative administration's strategic aims. And I've never been shy about saying that I have a zero tolerance approach for antisocial behaviour within our borough and within our council housing stock in particular. And the teams have really, really delivered on that. Our tenancy engagement teams are providing support for vulnerable individuals, offering money management sessions to help prevent issues before they even start. Mr Mayor, we are committed to ensuring that every resident feels valued and supported. We have launched innovative initiatives to tackle antisocial behaviour and improve community cohesion. From April 2023 to the 31st of January 2024, my ASB teams dealt with 342 cases, leading us to becoming one of the best authorities in the country at dealing with this toxic behaviour. We've improved and continue to improve our tenancy engagement, increasing the numbers of officers dedicated to this. From launching our tenants' Facebook page to rolling out neighbourhood programmes with Stand the Van, which if none of you have seen Stand the Van, you will be seeing him very soon, and linking in with community policing initiatives. All of my housing and communities teams are working tirelessly to create a safer, more harmonious environment for all. And I'm going to take this opportunity, Mr Mayor, to give my sincere thanks to everybody in my teams, because they have absolutely pulled it out of the bag over this last 12 months against a backdrop of, you know, financial issues that I've already discussed. And I do have to mention them. They've done really well. Mr Mayor, this Conservative group's strategic aims are clear. We prioritise the well-being of our residents, be they tenants of this council or not, recognising that health and happiness are essential ingredients to thriving communities. Providing access to support services and facilities, we are committed to ensuring that every resident has the opportunity to lead a fulfilling and rewarding life. We also recognise that some need more help than others. Now we have a customer accounts team to deal with rent collections and arrears. We want to support people to pay their rent and maintain their tenancies, something good for both them and the taxpayers of this borough, something that's never been done before. However, this doesn't mean we're a soft touch. For those unwilling to work with us, not unable, Mr Mayor, unwilling, we will take action to recover the outstanding money. We owe that to the taxpayer. Mr Mayor, since our last HRA budget, we have also carried out a lot of repair and upgrade works to our housing stock. 84 new kitchens, 56 new bathrooms, 326 new windows, 195 doors to new homes, to homes, remedied 346 priorities arising from the fire risk assessments. We've installed 331 fire doors across the general purpose blocks of flats and independent living units. We've delivered so far 76 level access showers. We've installed 16 stair lifts and 1 through the floor lift to support people to be independent in their own homes for longer. We've upgraded the central heating of 230 homes. We've installed external wall insulation to 170 homes, which will tackle fuel poverty, which is the main driver for me, is actually tackling fuel poverty, not necessarily the reduction in a carbon footprint, although that is a good unintended consequence. My main thing is fuel poverty. We've carried out a total of 305 fencing jobs in this time as well, which equates to over 1,000 metres of fencing. We've also embraced technology and innovation to improve service delivery and enhance the overall experience for our residents, from launching a new housing system to digitising our processes and procedures. Better use of technology to drive efficiency, transparency and accountability across our organisation. And I must draw people's attention to the fact that when I took over, everything was run on spreadsheets. Everything. You cannot run a maintenance depot on an Excel spreadsheet, but that's what I inherited. It's been absolutely ridiculous. You are not able in staff to fulfil their roles by doing that. You can't do it. So not only are we improving our existing stock, but we're building new ones too. At Valeview, we've got 14 new homes that will be completed and ready for new tenants by August. Byford Court is providing 12 new homes and will be completed and ready for new tenants in May. We've submitted planning permission for 15 new homes at Armson Road and a further 8 new homes at Chevrolet Road, as well as buying 3 properties on the open market. Mr Mayor, by the end of March, my team will have completed a full stock condition survey of our homes to allow me to rightly prioritise the future strategic investments for this council. I can do that because I will have certainty in the base data, something which I haven't actually had up until this point. We were led to believe it was available, but, you know, running on spreadsheets, nothing's going to be bang on that, is it? This is another reason, basically, why the business plan is taking longer than it should, because not only have we had to unpick all the financial stuff, we've had to unpick all the operational stuff as well. I and my current team cannot put together an accurate and sustainable business plan without good data. It's fair to say that unlike my Labour predecessors, with me as the portfolio lead on housing and communities, the shackles have most definitely come off my teams. In the wider context and the economic situation of this council, it was completely hidden from view. It was bad, but now people should be aware of what's been going on and what we've had to deal with. We weren't daunted either, so that's something else. We aren't a reed to be shaken by the wind, but we are a party of unbending principles. And to those waiting with bated breath, hoping for me to fail or that I'll be forced out, I shall say this: I have more to do. This is yet another inconvenient truth for you to hear, but no one should be in any doubt that the absolute financial failure which Labour has brought to this council, the clear lack of understanding from Labour at what they were overseeing is utterly astounding. And for those who will argue that auditors have said that everything is okay, no. Auditors just confirmed that you're not doing anything illegal. They don't go beyond that. If they did, Birmingham would not be bankrupt. It's amazing, Mr. Mayor, that Nuneaton didn't go bankrupt years ago. You should also never forget that the Greens have said right here in this chamber that they would abolish this council completely. That's something else. And we talk about risk. The Greens brought up risk before. The biggest risk to this authority is listening to the stuff that you put out on your social media, in this chamber, and then coupled with the option of Labour potentially running this council again. That is a huge, huge risk. Mr. Mayor, people should never be in any doubt that only a Conservative leadership, with its stress on sound money management, value to the taxpayer, focus on service, improvements, and understanding of the limits of local government at its very best, is the very best and only guarantee of economic and democratic and strategic longevity of this council. Finally, let me reaffirm our Conservative commitment to building a better future for all of those who call Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough home. Let me share our aspirations to build a better borough for everyone. This takes time, and in less than 3 years that we've had, it isn't nearly enough. Give us the opportunity to continue. By proposing this housing revenue account budget to the council, we are playing a significant part in building a sustainable legacy for this borough. And I thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I now submit this budget to the council.
Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Croft. I will open it up for now debate. Councillor Condacor.
Yeah, more personal attacks. Totally off topic as per usual. I do have to question what's been going on over the last 3 years. Everything is always, we found more things in the closet, we found this, we found that. But you never tell us what you actually found. It's always the previous administration or this or that. We had accounts under Labour, we have accounts under you, but we have no business plan. You've been in charge for 3 years. You should be at the state now where we can go in, Dawn Dawson and the accounts team can go and show us spreadsheets of your 20 or 30 or 50-year business plan, but you can't do that yet. Under Labour, I saw the business plans when the Conservative government made councils take on all the debt. Yeah, the councils owned their own council housing, and then you said 2012, I think it's around there, the councils were made to then buy back the debt and the homes again, putting loads of debt back onto the councils, which they then had to finance over the next few decades with massive public loan works bond, PW, whatever they are. And you talk about 300 million. Well, these plans were planned for many, many decades. And if you don't ignore inflation, then what is 100 million today in 20 or 30 years' time becomes 300 million. So it'd be nice if you shared all your spreadsheets and you're working for these crazy claims about millions and hundreds of millions. But if you look in the paperwork for today on the Treasury management, we can see capital finance requirement in 22-23 for housing was 75 million. And by the time we get to 26-27, which is 4 years on, it becomes 116 million. You can see how these debt levels just rise astronomically with both the effects of inflation and us building more houses. But if we build £40 million worth of housing and we have £40 million more debt, we aren't actually worse off, and people actually have a home to live in. So I would love to see your new business case long-term things, and it'd be really good if you ever produce one. A few more things I need to say. It is really good for some people to have zero tolerance. We quite rightly need to clamp down on antisocial behaviour. But I do fear if we have a single focus without understanding why particular antisocial behaviour happens, we can ignore problems and create new problems where people have, for example, special needs, all sorts of people with low capacities to understand what's going on, and they annoy neighbours. There needs to be sometimes people working to actually solve some of these problems rather than just using the stick always on people who don't always understand what's going on. So I totally get it that a lot of time we do need zero tolerance, but I believe this council is using zero tolerance sometimes on vulnerable people, people with special needs, and actually ending up taking them through the judicial system where they shouldn't be. Thank you.
Councillor Shires.
On the HRA budget, and I propose an amendment.
Do you have a seconder for that? Thank you. If we could view that, please. Do you have a copy thereof?
It's on.
Yeah, you've all got that, yeah? You've read it, brilliant, thank you. So our HRA account capital has been put together based purely on officer advice. So we've been advised that the contingency budget is to be reduced by 174,000, the PIR electrical works to be reduced by 367,000, and the slabs to tarmac to be reduced by 278,000. So the HRA revenue budget 24-25 attached as Appendix B to be recommended to the Council for approval. That is the rent increase of dwellings of 7.7% and an increase on service charges of 3% is agreed and recommended for approval.
Okay, we open for debate the amendment as put forward by the opposition party. Councillor Wilson.
It's easy with all the different budgets we're doing tonight. I can understand the confusion. No, it's fine. I think we've got a rainforest between us all tonight. I can't support the HRA proposal, the amendment. The rent increase is the same as us, no issue. The issue I have is with the 3% on the fees and charges. Now that may sound good today, immediately, but the long-term ramifications of that for the HRA compound themselves year on year on year. It's the same with council tax. If you make a quick cut here and there, the ramifications keep multiplying throughout the years. And as Councillor Golby highlighted in her original proposal, but the point still stands on the amendment, that the HRA needs to be financially sustainable for the long run. And if it isn't financially sustainable and we don't do these decisions, it means our ability to actually respond to emergencies, to do upgrades, and to look at new council housing stock in the future becomes diminished. And I think one thing we would all agree on as a council is that we do need to increase the council house stock that we have and the social housing stock. But this proposal would potentially undermine that possibility moving forwards. So for that very reason, Mr Mayor, I can't support the amendment as proposed. I understand why, but that we have to look at the long term, not just today. And I think that's why this is a misguided amendment. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Wishing to speak? Councillor Sleppard, would you like to respond? You okay? In which case we need to move that to a vote. We are voting on the opposition's alternative proposal for the housing revenue account. Is that correct?
Does that need to be recorded like this?
We will need to take on a recorded vote, so I shall pass it on to Brent, the Chief Executive.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Troman.
Actually, when it becomes the substantive motion, if it wins, but until then, it's just an ordinary show of hands. And then, if it did win, it would become a substantive motion, and then we'd have to have a recorded vote. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
We'll go to a hands vote. Those in favour of the alternative proposal by the Labour Party regards to the housing revenue accounts budget. Those in favour? Thank you. Those against? And abstentions? I'm afraid that's not carried. Thank you. So we go back to the original proposal as put forward by Councillor Golby. Do you wish to respond? No. Anybody else wish to speak on the proposal? Yes, Councillor Croft.
Perhaps will get shorter and shorter as the evening progresses. But just to pick up one of the points raised in debate, or a few of the points raised in debate, just to talk through in broad terms what the problems we've had with the HRA. The first one is the problem of debt management, which is what I discussed in Council in December, I believe, which is that the borrowing for the HRA, there was no provision made to pay it back. So for borrowing for the council, we put aside a provision each year, we call the minimum revenue provision, to pay off a portion of the debt when it matures. That was not done on the HRA. It was always just assumed that it would be reborrowed when the debt fell due. So it kept throwing the problem into the future. You can get away with that when you've got interest rates at the square root of nothing. You can't get away with that when you've got interest rates at 4 or 6% with the Public Works Loans Board. So that is a problem we've had to address, and we've had to start liquidating and repaying some of that debt. That's the first problem. The second problem that Councillor Golby has already alluded to is the chronic lack of data that we've had access to. You cannot set a proper, sustainable, meet the needs of your physical reality in your housing stock business plan without data from the ground, without sufficient surveys being done. As we have dug into it over the past 12 months, we've discovered that base data fundamentally is not there, so there would be absolutely no point setting a new business plan at this juncture, and that's one of the reasons why we set an interim budget for the next 12 months until a new business plan can be constructed over the summer, and work is already progressing on that. The third issue is that in the existing business plan, the business plan that we inherited that was meant to last decades, there was a huge assumption made, again, that a lot of the capital works would be paid for by borrowing. And again, you can sort of get away with that if you're not putting aside provision to pay off debt and the interest you're paying on it is next to nothing. But you really cannot get away with that. Get away with that in the current climate. And the upshot of that is that by the end of the programme, we'd have been sitting on about £273 million worth of debt, which is the best part of £300 million that Councillor Golby was referring to. Now, Councillor Condacall seems to think that we'll have inflated our way up to sort of county council level, but by the end of the programme, I think that even with inflation built in, that is an enormous risk to the future of the council. That is sort of Woking levels of debt that we've referred to this evening. We do not want to get into that situation. And I'll just pull him up on one more point that he raised, is that council officers, this is right across the public sector, are already very alive to the fact that some people are not hoodlums. They just need a bit of help. They need the support. We are very much ready to provide that support. But I also caution Councillor Condacourt against the bigotry of soft expectations in that quarter, because we do need to hold people to the sort of basic standards of a decent society, especially if everybody else is paying, or somebody else is helping subsidise their living accommodation. And as he's been begging and sort of hinting that he wants to see our workings and the evidence behind what we've been saying this evening, he says that he thinks that the council is being prejudiced against people with these difficulties. I'm sure he'd like to provide us with the evidence.
Councillor Golby, would you like to conclude?
So the reason why the figures are what they are, as highlighted by yourself, Councillor Condacourt, is because that is based on the current business plan, because we've not redone the business plan yet. Having just spent 10 minutes explaining why we haven't redone the business plan, it just shows everybody how selective hearing operates. Because I've stood here and I've explained it in great detail about the business plan, why we don't have a business plan, why I keep saying it will be ready when it's ready, because we need the base data. We need the information of what we've got, where we've got it, what condition it's in, and what we need to do with it. And this goes across the board for everything that we've got. Every brick that we own in this borough needs to be assessed suitably, so I can make strategic decisions that do not bankrupt this council. Because ultimately, leaving what is in place to run, that is what will happen. Now, there is a question over why has it never been picked up before. So we've gone through, as Councillor Croft alluded to, we're on our third 151 officer since taking over. So that averages, one a year, maybe. Just a little bit less. Congratulations, you get a long service medal. The first 151 officer, who was ultimately the one in place when all of these figures were drafted up, left not long after we took over. No accountability there. The second 151 officer was an interim 151 officer who was there to basically keep the lights on. The third 151 officer, we've done the forensic analysis. This is exactly why we've taken such a long time. But there's also the added bonus that we've had to do the same thing through the general fund as well, and through capital projects. So the HRA has come after all of those things. This is why it's taken so long. This is not anything to do with elongating a process that needs elongating. This is a case of we're keeping the lights on, we're doing what we need to do. My teams are really working hard. I can tell you that by the fact that I've told you how many kitchens they've installed and how many 1,000 metres of fencing they've put up. So to sit there and say otherwise, again, is quite disparaging, I think. And also, on the staff and the zero tolerance aspect of this, we don't kick out people just for fun. We have to go through legal processes to evict people out of homes. And we have to meet a series of pretty high bars to get that done. And we've had lots of success in doing that so far. We do not just drag people out of the houses, as you are portraying, or pick on the vulnerable. We don't do that. Actually, what we do is we have a multi-agency approach if we've got anybody with vulnerabilities. We call in social services. We call in child services. We do that. I mean, you'll know what I'm talking about. So we do that. So to say that my team just go in and evict people, no, we don't. We absolutely don't. And I will defend those teams to the hilt, because you have sat in this chamber and disparaged them on multiple occasions, and I pulled you up for it on multiple occasions, and then you go out there and you badge it as a personal attack. It's not a personal attack. It's me correcting what you have put on the public record, because everything in this room is on the public record. So I have to do that because it's only fair. The personal attacks, again, they're not personal attacks. They're not. I've seen some of the things that you've put out about me recently. Some of the quite disgusting things you've put out about me recently. I've seen them. People send them to me. People send them to me, even though you know that I blocked you on as many channels as I possibly can, because you actually posted that on Facebook. So the personal attacks are not personal attacks, they are corrections of misinformation that you are putting out against this council, against me as a portfolio holder, against my colleagues and against officers. And I will continue to do that should I need to. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
At that point, we'll take it to the vote. It is a recorded vote as required. I'll pass over to Brent, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is the vote for the housing revenue account budget for 24-25 as presented by Councillor Golby. If councillors could indicate whether they are for, against or abstain for that particular item. Councillor Baxter-Payne? For. Councillor Beetham? For. Councillor Brown? For. Councillor Clark? For. Councillor Cooper? For. Councillor Coventry-Morton? For. Councillor Croft? For. Councillor Kovacevic? For. Councillor Golby? For. Councillor Green? For. Councillor Guttridge? For. Councillor Condacor? Against. Councillor Markham? Councillor Morton? Councillor Pandey? Councillor Phillips has left the meeting. Councillor Jill Shepherd? Councillor Tracy Shepherd? Councillor Shires? Councillor Singh? Councillor Smith? Councillor Mandy Tromans? Councillor Rob Tromans? Councillor Walsh? Councillor Wilson and Councillor Wright. That motion is carried.
Is carried. In which case we shall move on to item number 11F, capital budget 24-25, and I ask Councillor Croft.
Discussed the capital programme and our changes to it at length earlier this evening. The points I would emphasise is that because we've set the envelope of a much more sustainable financial position, that our interest payments should be offset by our income from regeneration projects. This achieves the right balance in the programme between regenerating the borough and assuring the council's long-term viability. And I would just point out, actually, that despite of the changes and some of the scale backs that we have made, this is still a very, very busy programme. And we do have very, very high expectations for the regeneration and, of course, for the wider capital programme. So we've included the decarbonisation scheme for the Pingles, which will hopefully have knock-on effects for our energy bills. We've now made permanent our playground upgrade scheme as part of the capital budget because it went into revenue last year, and we have received a substantial grant from central government for incoming changes under the Environment Bill for food waste collection. So I just wanted to highlight that, Mr. Mayor, but otherwise I won't labour the point and I shall move the report.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank
you. Do we have any other member wishing to speak on this item? Councillor Condon.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's getting a long evening, but we're almost there. On the capital, there's obviously a mixture of things that are good and bad, and things also that should have been done earlier. You mentioned the decarbonisation at the Pingles, and that's a classic case of when we built it or when we refurbished it last time, would have been a great time to put some of these measures in. And now we're decarbonising things, but we're then building things like the new leisure centre, which might not have solar panels, and then it will need a decarbonisation. So maybe we should actually try and decarbonise things as we build them. Obviously, in this programme, there is still a lot of debt, in spite of £43 million. £43 million being cut from the budgets of places like Grayson Place. There's still an awful lot in here, an awful lot of borrowing, which then produces an interest. And I'm asking, are you sure, Councillor Croft, about the timing of some of these projects? Because there's still an awful lot going on at Grayson Place in this next single year. And obviously, if in reality they slip a year, it does help with our interest payments. And the other thing is, some of this is funded by Section 106, particularly the Physical Activity Centre in Bedworth, and we know how soft the housing market is and how the borough plan may or may not remove some of Bedworth woodlands, etc., from the borough plan. So I'm very alarmed that you rely so much on Section 106 for the activity centre. And earlier on, you did say that it was a fixed price now at 30.6 million. Earlier, we were told it was in the final stages of tendering and they were getting prices for things. Can you confirm, whilst we're going to approve or not this capital programme, is the 30.6 million the final bill, or is there more horrors to come? Thank you.
Any other speaker on this matter? Nope. Oh, you wish to make an amendment?
I do. So for the general fund capital, the budget for 24-25 of 54.38 million, it's attached as Appendix C to be recommended to the Council for approval.
Seconder for that. Councillor Tracy Shepherd.
Thanks, Mr.
Can you please confirm on page 3 your proposal, item S? S. Oh yeah, R through S, sorry, yes. Oh, okay. Yes, it must be, mustn't it? Yes. Yeah. Yes, just check on that.
Just to, so we can get complete clarification on what on what the amendment is. I believe it's for the general fund. Well, you refer to the general fund capital programme and that capital programme of 54.38 million. Can we just check that it's also in relation to items S and then also the housing revenue account capital programme items T to X? Is it all of those things? Just for the sake of clarification, it's all of that. Thank you, Councillor Torres.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Any speaker on that matter? Councillor Wilson.
Mr. Mayor, I am picking up on some things that Councillor Shire said when she was accidentally moving this one rather than the other. So forgive me if I didn't quite catch everything, but from what I gleaned when you were trying to move it before, you were saying that essentially U, V and X on page 3 are things that you have said, that officers have said are doable. So that's in relation to the contingency budget, the electrical works and slabs to tarmac. Yeah, is that correct? That was completely on officer. Okay. Okay. So my reservation about this, Mr. Mayor, is that officers might say, yes, it is doable, it is feasible, it can be done. I mean, you can always cut a fence from 6 foot to 4 foot. Doesn't necessarily mean it's wise to cut a fence from 6 foot to 4 foot. And it is acknowledging in some part the problems which Councillor Golby outlined in her statement, because it is actually looking at knowing the problems that we have with the capital budget and the 300 million that she referenced earlier, and to ensure that the revenue contribution to capital is reduced to balance the HRA revenue budget. I get all that. But my question is, are these measures wise? And I'm not convinced that they are. We have close to 5,000-ish council housing properties in the... Sorry? Closer to 6,000 council houses in the borough. And some of them are of an age, I think it's fair to say, built in the 50s and 60s as well. And with that comes problems with properties of a certain age. And I would have severe reservations about cutting the contingency budget. Contingency is there for a reason. You never know when problems are going to arise. Yes, it's doable. It's like you can say, I'm going to cut back on, you know, like what I put into my savings this month. It's doable, but actually, is it wise? Likewise with electrical works, there are some properties who may have aged electrical works in them that may need revisiting. And as Councillor Golby has alluded to again, the Capital Works survey is not yet done. So we don't know whether that is actually a wise move to make, because we might find that as part of the stock condition survey that is ongoing, we may have to invest more work in the electrical works than we anticipated. And slabs to tarmac, I think there are plenty of areas around the borough. I can think of Weddington in particular, areas of Bedworth, where some places have retained the traditional slabs that were put in decades ago. Some of them are cracking, showing their age, showing their wear, that are within the housing revenue account, and they become a liability to us. If someone slips and trips over them, they have an accident, they go to hospital, they have a month off with work, that then becomes a legal claim, keeps me in a job, but it costs the council money, Mr Mayor. And my interest is already on the paperwork, Mr Mayor, but the point is the same. We have a lot of areas where there are slabs which are there, showing their age, and I think removing it would be a step too far at this stage, because again, we don't know what the stock condition is in the areas that we have to look after. So again, I understand the reasons for what you're doing, but I don't think now is the right time to do it. It may be that we can review the budgets in light of the stock condition survey, but I think it would be putting the cart before the horse at this stage, Mr Mayor, so I wouldn't support the amendment.
Anyone else wish to speak on this amendment? No. Councillor Shepherd, would you wish to respond? Okay. Tracy Shepherd.
No, thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Shires? In which case we'll take that to the vote. We are voting on the proposed amendment as raised by the Labour Party. All those in favour? Show hands. Thank you. Those against? Okay. And abstentions? I'm afraid that motion is lost. So we will go back to the original proposal. And we need to take the vote on that, or do we, what we have? Councillor Wilson? Sorry, you did, yes.
I exercised my right. Councillor Croft already went through a wide range of this in the original budget speech, but I think there are some points which are vital to pick up on. So the Pingles decarbonisation, alluding to like we should have done it when it was originally built. That was the original refurb of it, rebuild. That was 2002, 2003. That's 20 plus years ago. I won't allude to how old some members are. Some might be happy, some might be sad about the prospect of going back to 2002, 2003. But if we knew then what we knew now, we'd all be in a different place. I'm sure we'd have all done different things with what we've built and how big we built them and everything. So it's comparing apples with oranges, Mr Mayor. We have to deal with what we have now, and we managed to secure some funding for that. And I think there's some other bits and pieces that we're waiting to come together before we can proceed with that. But if we are able to go ahead with it, subject to everything checking out, then I think that is a good thing. Grayson Place, will we deliver? If we don't do what is in the budget papers today, the answer is definitely no. So if everyone wants to see the regeneration of Grayson Place, Bridge to Living, the Bedworth Physical Activity Hub, every single member of this chamber should be putting their hand up in favour tonight. If they don't, they are voting against getting Grayson Place done. They are voting against the regeneration of our town centres. They are voting against upgrading our play parks. They are voting against upgrading Bedworth Indoor Market. They are voting against Leisure Centre. That is the stark reality of the choice that you are having tonight about which way you exercise your vote. And I think we ought to be saying as a borough, yes, we support all these things. And Grayson Place, will we deliver? If DLUX sign it off, I have given clear instructions to officers that we have to have this rolling as quickly as we can. So we are already working with the prospective developer to make sure that we get it within the new financial envelope, to make sure that we are able to commission those contracts as quickly as we possibly can. Because once we get the money from the approval to move the money around from DLUX, the clock is ticking. And we need to get there. So officers are under no illusion about how important this is. And I will be, sorry to say, although not sorry in a certain way, kicking them up the proverbial to make sure that they do what we have agreed to do, because we commissioned the report to look at what was feasible back in June, July time, as it says in the Cabinet papers we took through tonight. And I would recommend that every single person reads those Cabinet papers about the changes to the regeneration project, because it sets it out in stark detail that it was under threat, but it is only this side of the chamber that had the will, determination and ambition to put it right. And in terms of Section 106 delivering houses and the impact of that, I would draw Councillor Condacor's attention to the fact that our council tax base has gone up yet again this financial year in the region of 890 houses, I think was the figure that we were looking at when I last looked at the budget papers with officers, that the base had gone up approximately 890 houses. That is showing no sign of abatement at the moment. They are, whether we like where the houses are or not, and that is a separate debate all of us have had in this chamber over many years, the reality is they are moving in, they are buying the houses. I mean, just walk the streets and knock on the doors. It's election time. I think we'll all get to find out how much bigger the electorate is since we last stood. I think that is another stark reality. But the Bedworth Physical Activity Hub at £30.6 million, is it deliverable? Yes, if we get the sign-off as quickly as we can. As with everything, the quicker you sign up, the quicker you can get your contracts locked in, the quicker you can sort your prices out, and you can do a deal. That is what we are working on doing at the moment, and the sooner we can get that 30.6 locked in, the better. Because we have worked exceptionally hard to get to the point where we can now balance that particular budget, because as we have outlined before, there were unexpected cost pressures with inflation, interest rates, and let's not forget, as I outlined before many councils ago, the ground survey has identified contaminated water underneath the site we intend to build. We cannot let that contamination get into the water table normally. That poses a risk to everyone else and also the users of the physical activity hub. So we need to mitigate against that and build up approximately a metre above where we were planning on building. All that comes at a cost, Mr. Mayor, but every single achievable saving that we can make in that budget we have done. It even includes, Mr. Mayor, and I've had the technical issues no end from councillors and officers, we're not shipping out the soil from the site. That is one option that was on the table. We can take out the soil from where we're constructing, ship it off site, then we have to buy the material back in to build up where we want to. We've said no, we're not going to spend in excess of £500,000, £1 million moving all that. We will keep the soil on site in a designated area. I'm not going to say it's going to become as big as Mount Judd, because that would be ridiculous, but it will be a temporary new, smaller feature in the park whilst we construct the physical activity hub, and then when we're ready we will demolish the new mini Mount Judd and move it to where it's needed. All of this, what we are proposing tonight, is sound financial management to ensure the regeneration for the future, and we should all vote for it tonight, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Croft. In which case we will then move to the vote. Again, it is a recorded vote, so I pass on to Chief Executive Brent. Thank you, Brent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a vote on the capital budget for 24-25 as presented by Councillor Croft. If councillors could indicate whether they're for, against or wish to abstain as I call out their name. Councillor Baxter-Payne? For. Councillor Beetham? For. Councillor Brown? For. Councillor Clark? For. Councillor Cooper? For. Councillor Coventry-Morton? Councillor Croft, Councillor Kovacevic, Councillor Golby, Councillor Green, Councillor Guttridge, Councillor Condacor, Councillor Markham, Councillor Morton, Councillor Pandair, Councillor Jill Shepherd, Councillor Tracy Shepherd, Councillor Shires, Councillor Singh, Councillor Smith, Councillor Mandy Tromans, Councillor Rob Tromans, Councillor Walsh, Councillor Wilson, and Councillor Wright. Thank you. That motion is carried.
Thank you very much indeed, Brent. We move forward to item 11G, Council Tax 24-25. I ask Councillor Croft.
that gives our calculation and actually allows us to collect the council tax for the coming year. And I think this is the first time I've ever been in this seat. We've been able to actually set it at the budget council, because we've normally had to have a council tax committee, but due to some splendid foreplanning, we've actually put the meeting back this year so that we can wait for our friends at the county council and the police and crime commissioner. I do say this every year, but I will just point it out again. We are the collection authority, so everybody will see our logo on the bills that come through the door, but we only get the smallest precept. The rest of it goes to our friends that I just mentioned, the County Council and the Police and Crime Commissioner. We get this year about 11.5%. So that's the item in front of us, and it details those.
Thank you for your attendance. It has been a long evening, but we've come to a conclusion. So thank you very much indeed. End of meeting.